Yes.
I don't know why he does that.
You could never be ready for this.
Yes,
Got
go
some
for it,
donuts.
Trainer.
Who got told?
Rena got donuts.
Rita, do
Free Reese's peanut butter cups,
So you're getting bribed.
sugar
for
donuts. Um, Thank you for joining us this afternoon. This is I guess I got to call this meeting to order. This is a City of Hardeeville Council workshop. Go over the budget. And that's all we're going to do today. But I do want to go a little bit off schedule before we hear the presentation from staff and go through the PowerPoint. Mr. Carroll may have to leave us early or will have to leave us early. So I want to give him an opportunity to present his questions and thoughts because he'll have to leave at some point during the proceedings. So, John, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, and some of my questions may be answered by the PowerPoint too, but Mike, you knew I told you I had to, I had to go. I'd much rather be here, believe you me. Anyway, and it's not so much me questioning the position as just, I guess, defining the position I was going through. And I guess, one of the first things, and I think you did have a brief synopsis, and probably Steve can answer this. I just didn't know about the medical control physician. What is his name, Dr. Zorch?
Yes.
And I just saw, I'm not questioning it. I just wanted to kind of know about it.
We put a
exactly?
brief little description there. I don't know if.
Yeah, I did. I saw it.
Basically, it's required to run our EMS service. So basically, all of our paramedics actually operate under his medical license. So he approves all treatments and all the drugs that we can and can't use. It all goes through him. So he has to be on. We have to have someone on the paperwork for the state, and he's done it for the last few years for free. With going to ALS, it also increases his level of responsibility. So that's why we're looking to try to give him some kind of
Compensation.
compensation.
I guess that's kind of like a PA, they have to work under
Yes, sir.
a doctor.
Correct, exactly. So it's something we have to have. And we tried to get a backup, and she wanted like $60,000 a year.
Ooh.
So he's actually not requesting it. I know the increased responsibilities that he has. He's going to have some increase in QA, QI processes with this as well. So we're going to be requiring more and more of his time. So we're just trying to give him a little compensation to hopefully compensate for time.
And what is that compensation?
Thank you, man. That was my next
I
question.
believe it was 20 or 30. I can't remember what we put in there, sir. You?
For Dr. Zorch.
Dr. Zorch.
It's $1,000 a month. $1,000.
Yeah.
$1,000 a month.
Yeah.
You sure can.
No benefits.
To start off with, no benefits. Just,
Contract rate.
Absolutely, that's great.
That is,
You can't beat that.
I'm sure it'll go up in the future, but for now, he's not requesting anything, but he will retire at some point too.
That's true too.
So
Better to have something budgeted to be
Yes,
used to spending it, right?
yes, sir. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then we had Mike, our athletics programs manager. What exactly?
Yeah, this is audience participation.
Oh,
So our athletic programs manager would be the person that's doing all of our athletics. Right now, Logan and I split the detail. So that person will be managing all the athletics in the back, all the rentals in the back. We'll have soccer, hope to bring baseball back, anything at the rec center.
Glad you said.
Volleyball,
How many people hit
basketball.
me up this year about that? Because, everything right now is going to Jasper County.
Yeah, we have tried, last year we did try, we partnered with
I know
Ridgeland,
you did.
and we just didn't get the participation. So having a full-time person on board is someone that can help gather all that information and go out and do it and not have to worry about having other opportunities and stuff to deal with.
And I did take up for you with that too, because I said, because I remember you and I had talked a while back, and you just didn't have and you can't make them come.
True.
Okay. All right, thank you. I was just,
What is the target compensation?
I don't recall right offhand.
I think it's,
Probably close to somewhere in the mid-50s.
yeah, I thought it
That's
was
about
around
normal
that.
for the average.
Thank you.
would that be a trouble to find? Do you think somebody,
Not necessarily. It just depends on how much experience. The more experience, obviously, you have to pay a little bit more.
Yeah.
But weve got a lot of kids that are very eager, especially those that are getting ready to graduate, that can be, brought on and taught exactly what to do.
okay. Well, yeah. Mike, I think you had, I had it, a question, but I think you were up here talking to Bo a little earlier about the, Station 82 renovation. And that's, was almost 1.7, and that's because of the, mold and redoing and whatever.
This is a long story. I'll just give the abridged version. So, we did hire the council authorized an architect for the renovation. And what they've determined is the soil conditions under the foundation and on our property are not good at all. So we're going to be coming back to the council and basically going through what our options are. And with a living quarters and being a fire station, it's a higher, you have to have, there's enhanced building codes for living quarters. And the cost to do that is probably prohibitive. So what we're going to be recommending to the council is we look for an alternative location along Argent Boulevard. We could still use the building, and we could probably renovate the existing living quarters for other city facilities, i.e. as an example, I'm not saying like fleet management, stormwater, some public works functions, because we've got the big bay. And then probably one option might be moving forward immediately with 85, which is a site we own, remember, in East Argent, or looking for a site along Argent Boulevard. We've already identified 2 or 3 sites. So we're going to be coming back with that. So that $1.7 million, A, may not be adequate, and or B, if we can negotiate or either one of our existing development agreements or a potential, there's some people that are expressing an interest in developing in the city along that, we could put that as a requirement that they give us property. And we also ask for $2.5–3 million for a building. So we'll be bringing that back. I didn't want to spend a bunch of time because it's a complex subject. And Jody, who's got a fantastic PowerPoint, is not here. So we don't want to, rain on her parade. So that's kind of what that is.
When you say bad soil, what, like gumbo or?
Yeah, there's all kinds of technical. Do we know the technical, Steve? You're more involved.
Because I know if it's gumbo, they say gumbo, only thing it's good is to hold the earth together. You can't do nothing else with it.
There's some liquefaction issues. So because we are in a earthquake zone, that if any type of earthquake, basically it now becomes liquid underneath, and it could literally go down. And there's 2 layers of that, and the top layer is only like 4 feet underneath the current foundation. So
What do they have to do? Dig all that up and then bring more?
pretty much, yes, sir.
Wow.
And right now the site is 2 feet below base flood elevation, and for critical infrastructure, like he was saying, it needs to be at +3 base flood in it. So that's 5 feet it's got to come up. Which is a lot of dirt
A
right
lot
now.
of dirt.
They
Move
didn't-
and bring back in.
Mm-hmm.
so
And
they didn't-
that's only assuming, like you said, if we have to muck out 2 or 3 feet down, it may be more dirt to bring in. So.
Does that property have any value? Resale value, just saleable value?
Usually put nuclear down.
I'm sure it could be, but I'm not a salesman. So with the commercial prices along there, it's probably not a bad site, I would say.
I think the council recalls, or maybe the new council, we got that, we bought that from the county.
Mhm.
What, how many years ago, Steve?
2007, I believe, is when we purchased it.
Yeah.
I think we got it for like 200,000, 250.
250, wasn't it?
Yeah, maybe 250. And at that time, it was valued at over $1 million. So
station, but it's usable until a new solution is
Currently, yeah, we're not living in the station. We're in the trailer behind
Trailer.
it. So yeah, the inside living quarters is not livable. But we are using the bay and the trailer out back. Yes, sir.
So, Micah, I guess I guess the bottom line, are you gonna try to dig that dirt up and save that, or you just don't think it's worth it and gonna go somewhere else? I mean, what, are you weighing it?
We need to present that to the council. I mean,
So
the
you
one
weighing
option is that the city spend money and renovate it for existing or future additional public facilities. Second, obviously, is try to move it, sell the property, demolish the property. There's a bunch of options.
Okay.
Coming attractions.
Right.
Yeah.
Which we'll try to do relatively soon, because we just found, well, the last, couple of weeks, we found out the geotech report and the not good news, and here's your alternatives, and those aren't any better. So I didn't want to spend a bunch of time on that, but yeah.
There's also some structural issues there that they found when they came in and did their inspection as well. So
You're just full of good news today, aren't you?
he asked the question. I'm just giving the information.
All right, thanks, Steve.
Yes.
Okay, and Mike, also, in view of our last, I guess it was the last council meeting, Mayor, last Thursday, we had the information come up about the disappointing information come up about shortcut in the intersection there. And when I was going over this, I see that we've allotted almost, not quite, 1.6 million for shortcut intersection improvements. And I know we were talking about some turn lanes, and what is that? The turn lanes, or is it the getting ready for I fix to say Matt probably come up and tell me, but what exactly was that? Because I saw that as I was going through the book, and then I remembered our conversation with Matt Thursday, and it's kind of popped up.
Right, so the number that's in there represents the estimates for all the turn lanes, the
Okay.
signal installation, which that part is
What
actually,
installation?
the signal itself, the actual lights.
Okay.
That'll actually be paid for by SCDOT.
Okay.
They've always said they would do that, but we had to do the geometric improvements, the turn lanes and things. And of course, now we've had this new issue arise with the water line, which we're still working our way through. So we have not budgeted for that at this time. Those funds, that is going to be paid though with SCDOT with this signal, and the rest of those funds are development agreement fees, and then also additional developer contributions that we've already talked through various parties with. So
You don't think, and you don't have much hope then that the DOT is going to change their mind about having to move that water line?
I'm not willing to say that yet, sir. We're still working that angle. So
But not hopeful.
I am,
Oh, you are
I
hopeful?
remain optimistic and hopeful.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, sir.
John, we're going up the chain, DOT, and this person is a district person.
Yeah.
So we're going up the chain to try to, say this is not reasonable. You can't double the project cost to move a water main that's under the shoulder of the road.
Road.
It's all over the state, but I don't want to get.
No, but
I think there's some opportunities that we can hopefully meet the right people and, get some relief.
because when I had seen that, I said, well, after our meeting Thursday, I did have some questions about that. Also, and I know I'm kind of skipping ahead but I got to get out of here, John. But I also saw, that last year we had budgeted, for the 21-22 budget cycle, $100,000 for, PTO. And it had ended up spending 145,000, something like that. Was that for people leaving, having to buy them out, or because I remember that kind of is in a period cycle. Some years you don't have to worry about it, and then other years it peaks up and.
That's correct. There's really two main pieces to that. The first is, like you say, somebody leaves, we owe them a PTO payout.
Right.
The second piece of that is twice a year, employees are allowed to buy a week's vacation, and that also gets charged to that line. That's
Okay,
what that
I
is.
didn't know that, okay.
And depending on when somebody leaves, that's what we call our PTO buyback. But depending on who leaves, some of the people who are quite long in the tooth with their run here, that's going to cost. That's going to be a little more expensive than somebody who's just showed up in the last couple of years. I got the appropriate eye roll that I was trying to get from that, so thank you.
I thought you said you were waving that. Yeah, wave, right?
Got one on each side there.
Anything else, Joe?
And I know, not so much a question, Sam, but I know the, assistant police chief, probably you, to be completely honest, you probably have needed that for a while. And knowing you, you probably held back asking for it, but, but you definitely, are going to try to do that this year. Cause I said it was one of the positions that Mike had approved of, I think it was 18 out of 33, Mike, that you had approved positions.
Right, well, I probably wouldn't be asking for it if it wasn't for the issue that I had earlier in the year, so. Because again, I've always said I'd rather have boots on the ground than boots in the office, so. But again, I think it's time, because I don't know how much longer I'm trying to get my 40 years in before I even decide to leave. And hopefully with the city manager, he stays, I'm gonna stay, because we have such a good working relationship, so.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's just about time.
Oh, right, yeah, and you probably have needed it really and just didn't do it.
Right.
But I was actually, I was surprised, but also, pleased when I saw that, because I had thought, because I know what all you have to do, and, anyway,
Well, I just gotta start letting other people handle stuff
delegate.
in the office. So that's another reason too.
And, I know I'm jumping around, but like I said, I've only got and I don't know exactly how to ask this question. Let me see how I can phrase it. Depending on what we talked about Thursday, that you have me working on, would that have any effect on the building that y'all are requesting for the PD? Oh, that wouldn't change that right now. You see what I'm saying, Mr. Mayor? You see what I'm saying?
You were very cryptic, and I think you need to. I think you need to decode it since this is a public
Mike, do
meeting.
you understand what I'm saying? I'm happy because, you know,
No, I think
No,
what we talked about, it offers opportunities to expand parking capabilities, expand park and recreation,
Now I get it.
expand
saying, Mayor.
property for, again, I'm going to say it very quietly because I don't want
Yeah.
Sam to hear me, but
No.
expansion of the police
Right.
department.
But that has, no, so that would be future. That has nothing to do
Right,
with.
absolutely, right.
I didn't know if maybe you had thought about it and said, well,
Right.
maybe we need to, okay.
Yep.
That is a good question because, Mayor, because, I mean, it could be,
No, and for the purposes, because it is a public hearing and we have to be open for the benefit of the public. Mr. Carroll is being cryptic because the subject is executive session and therefore not available yet for public consumption. So that's why the decoded message. So he does not violate the rules of executive session. Did I say that? So that's why, anybody watching, that's why that has been done.
maybe too cryptic.
Well, it was so cryptic, I didn't get where you were going yet on it, but yeah, I got it after a while.
And I guess also, and I know I'm probably messing, John up here with his skipping around and stuff, but I won't be here for most of that. What about, enterprise? What did you decide? I know I'm jumping ahead, but I know that's gonna be
We have a couple of slides
concern.
that are a part of this. Is it okay for John to just go ahead and walk through?
sorry, Michael, what you wanna do?
Well, I think he'll go within the, how long can you be here, John?
Till around 2?
Okay,
Yeah,
we'll
we'll
get
get
to
there.
that.
We'll get there.
That's it for me. Yes, donuts over there.
Yeah,
That was not enough.
I think John wanted to go first so he can get a donut before the dentist gets a hold of him. All right, so we'll go back on schedule. I just want to give what I always give at the start of a workshop. This is a workshop. The rules of order are relaxed. We're not going to go in order. Anybody can speak when they have something to ask or comment on. Just let's be sure, let's not talk over each other. Wait till the person who has the floor yields the floor and has done their conversation before before you go in, okay? So that's how we generally do the workshops, and why I always remind everybody before that. So let's go back on the original schedule, and I'll turn it over to Mike and John.
Thank you. As always, it's always a pleasure to come before you. It's my standard spiel. In this budget workshop, I was kidding with John before, it should be 1.5. It's really not 2. It's not really 1, but so I'm going to say it's 1.5. But so a lot of the stuff you've seen before, and obviously we were very educational, and it was very wonderful to get your feedback, which obviously, you know, shaped the proposed document that you have in front of you. So we do appreciate that previous workshop. Couple of housekeeping things real quick. So remember next Monday, noon, we're going to be here with our folks from Department of Transportation. We have lunch, and then we did do an agenda, which we'll be sending out here shortly. So we did invite the applicants for those 2 projects to be here as well. So there's going to be some interaction and dialogue on the 2 specific applicants, one on 170 and one on the Argent Boulevard. So, and then the other thing, does everybody have their calendar or their phone, they could check. May 8th or 9th, we'd like to have a workshop. That would be in the afternoon, so it'd be a Monday or Tuesday. This would be on MZDO update, as well as the workshop that I think the council wanted on landscaping and tree preservation. So is everybody available on May 8th or 9th?
Yes, for me.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Both those days, or do anybody have a preference? No? Okay. So we're trying to get the consultants set up and other people that need to be here for that. So we'll give you an update, then we'll get on to tree preservation, landscaping stuff. Okay, go ahead. I have it. Okay.
You want me to? Yeah, maybe you need to do it. I can't do more than one thing at a time.
All right, real quick, agenda. So we all know this is going to be audience participation. This isn't just the John and Mike show up here, you know, a bunch of talking heads. We're actually going to have people come up. So really want to focus on a couple things. Enterprise, and Mr. John pointed out a good thing, enterprise fleet management, the capital improvement plan. We're going to try to go through those 30-something proposed capital improvement items, and obviously the millage. So I think those are the 3 things we really want to focus on. You've seen this before. We modified these spreadsheets based on the feedback we got from the last meeting. Go ahead. Okay. Checklist is this. This is where we're at. We're doing a budget workshop today. We may or may not have another budget workshop. That's completely up to the council. So our goal would be first reading on May 18th and then adoption on June 1st. So that would be one of the quickest I think we've ever done this. I think we did one other year. I think we got it done about this time, but so that would be great if we could do that. If not, that's up to the council when we present those. All right, keep moving. You've seen this before, but these are just the updated figures. Again, very financially healthy at the end of this fiscal year, and then based upon our proposed plan, still very financially responsible and healthy for the next fiscal year. You can see the department heads asked for 54 positions. We're recommending that you fill approximately 18 full-time equivalents. Very good news in the building and planning department. We're expecting increased growth there, so that's always very good news. Go ahead. We're going to talk really more in detail about the capital improvements plan. I know you have that in your book, but we'll give you gave them strict orders, less than a minute. So this will be, I mean, obviously not for the council, but for my folks here, that we're not spending 5 minutes on each capital project request. So we're going to try to do that relatively quickly and get feedback from the council. Let's see, 33 projects we're going to talk about. And then obviously based on, I guess, the initial discussion, the budget does include a $2 million reduction in the overall millage rate. And as you do see, Beaufort County will be doing their reappraisal or reassessment. So we won't have those amount, but obviously that'll be, the same amount with the reduction that the council decides for the Jasper County portion of the community. Go ahead. You saw this list before. Here was the previous list. And then if you go to the bottom portion of that slide, that's what we're recommending. I think the council did get the job descriptions of those particular positions. We can talk about any of that if you have any questions on that, but that's what we're recommending.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
John asked earlier about the recreation salary. Could you please give us the starting salaries of these different positions that you're recommending?
Many of them are in the book, but I don't think all of the job descriptions have that.
Two-thirds have it and
Yeah.
about a third doesn't. In the very back area.
It's in the,
Yeah, all the way to the back.
Very back.
That exhibit A, the last tab, sir.
Maybe she didn't have it in
description,
the,
keep going.
some of those salaries, you don't know what.
yeah, I saw the job description. Oh, it's in that, okay.
Very back.
All right, yeah, I got it.
And
Again,
some-
it's not all of them, but
Yeah.
Mr. White is indicating it's probably about 2/3. And if there's any.
Mr. Mayor, we can provide you the classification plan too, and maybe just simplify this, which we probably should have done. So we can send that to you.
No, if it's here,
Okay.
then it answers my question. I didn't read the job descriptions, obviously, so I didn't see it there.
And Mike, something else I would add,
Yes, sir.
there's no targeted start date, so and that would be helpful in the future because these expenses will not be all at one time. Yeah.
Savings as to when we-
Yeah, that's right. But very helpful, excellent.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I guess some of those positions didn't have salary because y'all don't know what the salary, I guess, is gonna be yet.
No, they all have salaries, John, in the classification plan. There's a standard format, and some of them, they didn't put the range, the classification rate and the rate, the wage rate.
But we have it.
And we'll provide that. We can even provide some type of projected start date of those positions. And, well, it takes, sometimes we can recruit people relatively quickly, sometimes not so much. So,
Yeah.
and when we budgeted, we did it based on projected when we think we could hire them, how long, active service months they have. So we can provide that as well.
Since you've mentioned it, may I just add this other point? You're talking about like a couple of those positions I would think would be tough to recruit in the sense the availability of people for those jobs, the physical therapists, that kind of thing, and the police and fire. And so, I mean, I think early starts are critical to get those people when you kind of want them on those things, my personal opinion. Those are competitive situations.
Yes, our experience has been as soon as Mr. Simbor says you have this position, go ahead and start hiring. Nobody tarries at that.
Fast foot, right?
Any other questions, Harry?
Yes, there are a request on the fire department for 3 firefighters and 6 part-time paramedics. And I see there's explanations here on page 186 and 187. Could you clarify what the 3 are going to do? What is a part-time paramedic? What hours do they work, et cetera?
The part-time medics will be when we have our full-time medics are either on vacation, sick, whatever. They'll be called in to staff the ambulance. So we make sure we keep that up at 24/7.
So the ambulance number 1
Yes.
will be staffed 24/7 by a separate crew than the firefighters?
No, sir. They'll be the 6 safer grant positions that we received. We're basically transferring to that ambulance. So that ambulance will be the 6 safer grant positions that we are hiring. We still have 3 of those to hire.
So, again, the question is, the ambulance staff,
Mhm.
that is a separate staff from the firefighter staff,
And the fire
That's-
trucks, yes.
It's a separate one that's manned 24/7, and we got a SAFER grant that funds them for what, 3 years,
3
was
years,
it?
yes, sir.
3 years. Okay, so now the part-time, the 6 that you're asking for,
Mhm.
they come in when those 24/7
Yes, take a
ambulance
day off, call in
staff,
sick, something like
they call in sick. So are they just available when?
They're basically going to want to be other medics that work at other agencies around the area that want to pick up extra time and make a little extra money elsewhere.
So when we have a planned vacation, when
Yes, you go ahead
if
and
somebody
reschedule.
calls in sick, we have a number to call and they come in.
Yes, sir.
So they're basically on call, not on staff.
Correct.
To
Yeah,
simplify.
they would only get paid when someone of our full timers is off,
Okay.
for whatever reason they're off.
How will you go through this? With an agency or?
Oh, we'll hire them ourselves. We can handle it.
So then ambulance number 2.
Hmm?
It says here that it's going to be at Station 81.
Correct.
And given what we heard about 82, it's going to be there for quite some time,
Possibly.
probably. So as I understand from when you presented this, this would be a backup vehicle when, for whatever purposes.
He's going for routine.
So are we staffing that? And if so, so we don't have a staffer. That's just sitting there.
Yes.
And if some multiple emergencies arise, we have our firefighters capable of operating it? Or
Absolutely. Yes. It'll be fully functional. It just won't have staffing.
it won't have
Um,
staffing?
And the intent there is like, it hits the fan today. And myself and our deputy chief, who is a paramedic, we could technically jump on that thing and ride the call if we need to.
Right.
And it's
But-
right across the street. We can literally run over, grab it, and go. So it'll be ready to go 24/7 as well. It just won't have the staffing. For hurricanes or any other instance, we're then gonna, when we do call in extra staff, we'll make that an actually staffed ambulance for those type of incidents as well. For Festival on Main, we're probably gonna staff it and have it down here so that we don't have to, get an outside ambulance to handle our business.
So what we'll have fully operational in Hardeeville
Mhm.
is one ambulance at 82,
83.
83, excuse me, and one, and that's it,
That we run, yes, sir.
that we run.
Yes, sir.
And Jasper County now will have one at Mead Road,
Yes, sir.
excuse me, at Marsh Cove instead of Mead Road.
I actually, yes. The emails I sent you, I actually
Yes.
called Chief Wells afterwards and spoke with him. His current plan is to leave it at Mead Road and then in a few months, look at the data and find out where he is with the data. And then be a data driven. If he needs to move it, he'll move it, yada, yada, yada. But his initial, when we stand up Medic 83, he is going to have Medic 34 staying at 34 for now.
Okay, so it's
That was
going
the
to
last thing
stay,
he just told me a couple hours ago after that last email that I got from you.
okay.
I did call him just to say that it's probably going to be discussed in this meeting, just to let him know. And he informed me that his plan was to leave it at 84, which is different than what we had talked about back in February. But we're going to hash all that out one way or the other.
I like the idea of what you just said, that this should be data-driven. There are certain statistics that should drive any decision, particularly when it comes to medical costs. So if the county's medical costs is 1 per month up in wherever Marsh Cove serves, and 1 per month in Levy, and there are 10 a month in Sun City and Margaritaville, that should be data that should be drive the location of the ambulance. So I think the council would benefit when this data is accumulated, that we are made privy to that. And also, if there's at any time the Chief Wells wants to move that ambulance from Meade to Marsh Cove, could we please have a data-driven explanation?
He'll definitely have, that'll all be part of the mutual aid agreements. I'm sure we'll get that all laid out as far as if he decides to move, once the agreement is, we can put that all in the mutual aid, auto aid agreement that we will be presenting in the next couple months.
So if, with that arrangement, we would have an ambulance at Steiny?
Any road.
It's like Purisburg. I'll never get it right. Fury. And then we'll have at Station 83, and we'll have Mead Road.
And Medic 25, because that covers the southern end and the Riverport area as well.
That,
I mean, it's in the county area, but yes.
it's the county. It's
covers
not
part of the city.
It's not really part of the city, but I'm talking about city coverage. So
No, it provides coverage to all of Riverport, all the way up to where the old racetrack was, basically. So anything in the city that's south of there, that ambulance covers.
okay,
So, I mean, it's a smaller portion, yes, sir.
yeah, but it should be. I agree. It should be data driven where the locations of these are.
Now, I will say, if Chief Wells is going to leave that ambulance at Medic 34, I'm not putting paramedics at Engine 82. I'm going to move them somewhere else. There's no reason to have an ambulance and medics covering the same area. Because now you got a bunch of medics on the scene when something on the south end needs a medic and there's not a medic there. See what I'm saying? I'm going to have to now relook at where I'm going to put our paramedics to best serve our citizens. So it's kind of throwing a wrench in things, but we'll get it figured out. And literally, I called him probably 11:30 before I came up here, and apparently it's changed.
Well, that's good news because now the citizens of Hardeeville are serviced by 3 ambulances that are staffed 24/7 instead of 2, which was what we, on November 17th, were anxious to have, and additional coverage, not just trading one ambulance for another.
And I don't think it was going to be trading, because the whole point of us, if they were going to move that ambulance, that's why we were going to up staff Engine 82 up to paramedic level. And our arrival times, we actually arrive 30 seconds prior to the ambulance on almost every call. That's our average. So we would have, our medics are going to be taking control. When the ambulance gets there, literally at that situation, the ambulance is nothing but a taxi. Because our medics are already there. They're already making patient care. They've already started patient care. We just need a bus to get the patient to the hospital.
All right, I'm not going to pursue any further until there's some decision made to move it from Mead Road. Then I think we need to have this conversation taken up again. Just please, one last question: the 3 additional firefighters that you're asking for, why and where are they going?
Increased staffing, and they will be placed more than likely at Station 81. But I have to
Increased staffing. Why are we increasing staffing in Station 81?
Decrease the overtime cost. We're averaging almost every shift a person is off. And that means only one more person can be off before we are forced to call back personnel. Because we have to keep the staffing at a minimum level of 2 at the outlying stations and 3 downtown. We're trying to decrease trying to decrease overtime and also increase staffing and safety of the firemen.
Isn't that true of any department? And, the police department, for example.
Absolutely.
They have overtime too, because if somebody goes out, they have to call somebody. So everybody has that challenge.
Absolutely.
Okay. So do you know what that overtime number is?
Not off the top of my head. I can look it up.
Okay. All right.
Is
Those
it?
are my questions.
Mike, I do have one question. Looking at this up there,
Sir.
I see downtown development. Where did those 3 personnel go?
They went into planning.
Okay,
I think before I got here, right, Brandon, we had kind of a downtown development in Katy, and we had other personnel. They've gone back into the planning department.
okay, so it's just a shift by name, basically.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks,
Sir. All right, any other questions before we keep moving? I know John wants to get to enterprise fleet management, so I'm going to try to hurry up and get there.
I'm sorry, John.
That's all right. So again, this just shows the progression over the years, and I tried to highlight the departments that were requesting additional people. All right, we'll move on.
John Brown's turn.
So I think the council, I don't want to say we were nebulous, but I think the council asked for more clarification about enterprise fleet management, why we chose to not further the contract on the purchasing as well as the maintenance and the problems we had. So Mr. Davis and Mr. JB and Jody and I think John and others got together and put together a brief presentation trying to go over the issues with Enterprise, what our proposed solution is, and then as well as the buying out those 26 vehicles. So that's all included in the next 4 or 5 sides. Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Great introduction there. So, just to get to it here, long story short, back a couple of years ago, the city formed its due diligence to go out and find the best pricing option for fleet management for the vehicles in the city. Essentially, in 22, we decided to go ahead and go with Enterprise in FY22 to handle that. We entered into the agreement with them. However, Enterprise hasn't performed up to par, according to us. We've had issues with acquiring vehicles. The first batch of vehicles that we acquired, everything seemed to be going through fairly smoothly. However, after that, got a little bit more difficult dealing with them. We think it's because of allocation with the dealerships and such, and they just couldn't get their hands on the vehicles. We had issues with that, and then further that, we had issues with vehicle maintenance, with the processes that we had to go through with Enterprise to get vehicles maintained at local providers and such was just a lengthy process. Things that would take them days to do, we typically, I think, as a city staff could pick up the phone and resolve in probably just a phone call. So issues like that, that's what's driven us to today to look at options for how do we better this fleet management program. So next slide. So what we took a look at was a couple different things, and what kind of came clear to us is we've got an opportunity to bring this fleet management program back under the oversight and execution of the Public Works Department. Down at Public Works right now, I don't know if you've been down there lately, but we have one bay that actually we do minor repair and maintenance on vehicles down there. We have a man lift down there, 11,000 pound man, not man lift, that's a huge man, wouldn't it? Vehicle lift, 11,000 pounds. So we can pick up, upwards of a heavy pickup truck and do maintenance on that vehicle. So what we're proposing to you is that we bring this back under the oversight and the execution of the Public Works Department. And how we would do that, of course, would be to we would start with an internal reorganization of the Public Works Department, the staffing that's there. We have right now an in-house mechanic who has a lot of experience with vehicle maintenance. I think we're upwards of 40 years right now. So we're bending his ear on how we can make this a go for us. And so we're looking at opportunities to do that. And we believe that we can show a cost savings even in the first year, upwards of 20 to 25% of what we're spending right now. And that's just in general repair and maintenance of vehicles. So internal reorganization in our staff down there, as well as a space renovation. We'll need to renovate some space down there to make it more conducive to not just one vehicle in the bay, but upwards of 4 vehicles in the bay at one time. And then, of course, procuring the right tools, equipment, inventories that we would need on hand to make sure that we can provide speedy and timely service to the vehicles to get them back out to the operators. Estimates right now to do all of this that we're seeing is about $100,000 right now is what we're looking at. We feel we can do that within that number to get us up and running. Next.
John, before you
Yes.
move to the next.
Yes, sir.
So if I understand your proposal here, we would take an existing Public Works employee and make them fleet manager and maintenance guy?
So wouldn't look at it necessarily as an employee. I would look at it as a position. So we have a position right now that we're proposing that we take that position and we boost it up to create a fleet manager position. Now, again, I think where you're going with that is one person. That's a lot to put on one person's shoulders.
You had that right. You're right on the money there.
Roger.
What if he gets hurt and he's gone for a month?
Sure. We're looking at these contingencies as well. We will have things in place. We'll have a program in place in order to back our folks up down there. We do that right now. But we would not put all of this initially onto one person. we need to establish a fleet manager role, which would be responsible for vehicle acquisition, resale, maintenance of the vehicle, any kind of tracking that needs to be done. But we also need to have that critical point of that maintenance personnel that can come in and do the work that we need done. So with that being said, it would be more of a team effort. We would establish within our organization right now, we would take something from the grounds maintenance, if you will, it's there right now, move it over and develop this fleet manager role. We would hire the right people. We would go after the right people. And what do I mean by that? When we're talking with other municipalities right now, particularly just to the east of us, Bluffton, we've been in discussions with them now for several weeks about what they do and how they accomplish what they do over there. They have a phenomenal program that's established over there. They have a phenomenal facility that they use to do the maintenance. And so we're looking at that as a template, a good template for us to follow. But to get off the ground and get it running, we need to start right now with one person, and then it will be a team effort, if you will, from Public Works. I may be involved in that as well. And then we would look at more of perhaps an operational logistics person that would also step in to assist with this program.
May I, go ahead, Harry.
No, go.
You know, let me be a little bit of the devil's advocate here. It all sounds good on paper. It all sounds very, like, hey, wow. But there's a lot more to this than meets the eye. The parts, getting someone in here, and the portion of your time for what you were hired to do now takes more time to manage this too. And I think it's a roll of the dice how successful we are here on this one. And I guess my feeling is, why not have someone do it externally, like a dealership or something, if we can get the pricing? That's their business, that's what they're in, that's what they do, rather than take us, which that isn't our business, maintaining fleets and this kind of thing, to the level we're talking about. I'm just very cautious of this. And the amount of time it pulls you away from some of the priorities that you have and things like that. And, I'd almost be in favor of doing it externally, learning how they're doing it and pulling it in. So I'm just saying it's a lot to do recruiting the people, getting the mechanics. We're an attractive workplace for et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Somebody gets sick. There's a lot of moving parts here.
Yes, sir. Totally agree with you, and I understand where you're coming from with your concerns there. We've looked at that as well. I mean, we've put this down on paper and we've whiteboarded it. We went all through this to try to figure out how best we can go about this. And again, of course, using our neighbors to the east over in Bluffton to help us understand what they do and how they accomplish what they do. Right now, Bluffton has a supervisor and 2 technicians that take care of upwards of 120 vehicles over there right now. The vehicles that we would look at over here initially starting would not be the public safety, but would be more the pickup trucks, the sedans and things like that, which would probably be in the neighborhood of 40, maybe 50 vehicles tops, which we would work to maintain. And when I say maintain, I'm not saying we're going to do a lot of heavy body work or engine replacements or transmission work. What I mean by that is basic repair and maintenance. So some tires, some brakes, oil changes, things like that is what we're looking at. And then, that's the maintenance side of it. And then, of course, you have the management side of it as well, which, is the tracking, is going out and negotiating with the vendors and such. And so that's a piece that we also plan to bring into this. But we've got to start somewhere, and this is our proposals, how we would do this. Believe we can get the right person into that position. We can make this work, and we can almost immediately see a savings across the board.
Some of the places that you visited, from when they got the idea to do it, to the time they got competent and were over the learning curve, did you ask them how long that took? Was that a year and a half, 2 years? Because on the second month, you're not competent on that kind of that endeavor. Takes a while to learn what you don't know. And
yes or no, I honestly did not ask that specific question.
I think that'd be an important one, how long it took them to get up to speed from
Sure.
when they started it.
Absolutely. It's a very valid question to ask. Yes, sir.
if I can, to follow up a little bit on what Bo said. First off, I look at that number, and I think that's very conservative. To bring in personnel and equipment. Equipment for what, to take on that much maintenance can be very expensive. And I just think that's a conservative number. But also is, now, are we jumping the gun here? Because we haven't even negotiated out of our lease with with Enterprise yet. Are we putting the cart before the horse with this?
So this is, I think, running parallel with that. We're looking to say, I think we're looking at, we're going to get out of this lease, however we get out of this lease with Enterprise. And once we do that, we need to be ready to move in this direction. To answer your first question, we looked at it carefully as to what it's going to cost, and we think it's going to be an estimate of about $23,000 to take a person that's already, or a position, sir, already in our organization and boost it up to a fleet manager position. And that's a full total package. That's not just salary, but that's benefits and everything that we see across the board. Right now, research shows us in this area anywhere from 65 to 78,000 a year is what a fleet manager would be paid for this type of work. And so we know that for sure. Then there's other renovation work that needs to be done in the facility. Not a lot, but there's some reorganization. And then, of course, buying another vehicle lift would be ideal to provide what we need to do the work. And then, of course, tool sets that we need. We've been in communication with some tool dealers as well to get an idea of what they would bring to the table if we decided to go with them. And everything essentially comes into about $100,000 for us right now.
Because my concern is if we pull somebody from already in-house, how they're going to have time off, they're going to have vacation time, and maintenance issues need to be addressed immediately.
Sure.
That could be a very difficult. I'm saying is I could see this as a 1.5 person position, just to be able to cover those times.
You could almost say that that's what we're kind of looking at. So
Okay.
we're looking at an individual right now, or a position right now, if we hire the right person in there to cover that person when they're on. For general
Okay.
minor repair and maintenance, we have another person in Public Works that can actually do that work as well.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to, because of time, I want to turn the floor to John and make sure we exhaust all his questions.
To back up, Mr. Mayor, on what you were saying, say, because you said maintenance, oil changes, things like that, say, police department, because I know police vehicles from experience, they're on the road a lot and they have some major issues. Suppose Sam's got a car that's the engine block has to be replaced, or the transmission, or whatever. You're not equipped to do that. So what are your plans for, I guess, farming it out?
Yes, sir. That's a call to butlers or whomever we would be working with at that time to take on that work for us. Everything else, we're talking minor general repair and maintenance things. Again, replacing an engine, a transmission, any kind of large amount of body work that's not what we're talking about right now. That would be farmed out to, the community vendors out there that would provide that service for us.
All right, considering that, even with that, you still consider that you can save over what the plan we got now, even when you having to farm it out still, some of these big parts, you still think you can save?
Yes, sir. And let me just throw an example out, if you would. Just yesterday, our in-house mechanic changed a water pump on a vehicle. Vehicle was brought in, water pump had to be changed out. In 45 minutes, he had that water pump changed out. The parts cost about $140. No labor, because we're already paying for that. If you would have taken that out in town, it likely would have been $500, $600, and maybe that road or that vehicle would have been off the road for 2 days till we got it back. That's an example of what we're talking about, how we save time and money with this going forward.
I mean, that's one of your expertise, so I mean, that's, so I understand. It's just hard for me, like I say, but I don't have your experience either to grasp all that, and I think it's probably the rest of us thinking the same thing. It seems like just a huge job, and I guess in a way we got kind of gun shy too, because, Enterprise was supposed to be so wonderful last year.
Sure.
And we went along with it, but I always was a little bit concerned with Enterprise just for the sake of police vehicles. because I know police vehicles are an issue because they, used a lot. And I wondered if, Enterprise was gonna be able to take care of the police situation. And I haven't asked, but if I had to guess, that was probably one of the issues with Enterprise with the police department because, I mean, they're the ones that own the road all the time. But anyway, I guess we need to get back to Enterprise too, Mike, because, what are we gonna do? Or Joe or whatever.
Where,
John, somebody.
Coming attraction.
Yeah.
Sweat, yeah.
I'm sorry, just real quick. So a group of us did spend a lot of time talking with this, and John and others priced out everything. But another component of this that John talked about, and it's hard to emphasize in a budget, but the sheer time savings can be tremendous. We waste, I shouldn't say waste, but our employees spend an awful lot of time getting regular routine maintenance on their vehicles that if this is done in-house, these vehicles can be swapped out a lot quicker. They can be scheduled sooner. And again, like John said, these vehicles are back on the road much, much quicker. I mean, it's a whole ordeal right now if, say, an inspector has to get his oil changed. I mean, it involves other people and rides and all that, and we can eliminate all that. So that's an important part of it too, is just the savings and getting people out doing what they're supposed to be doing rather than worrying about getting their vehicle serviced. And that's something we talked about a lot. So I just wanted to emphasize
Okay,
that.
no, that's good.
Before we go to that, so I think John asked this question, but so we have, for other than very minor routine maintenance stuff, like the public safety vehicles that have to get back on the road, we have other outlets of service.
Yes, sir. I mean, we use them today.
Okay.
You've got butlers here in town that takes on a lot of the work right now. So
Okay, so this is not our sole source of.
no, absolutely not. I apologize if I didn't make that clear. I was trying to get across that it would be just general minor repair and maintenance here. Everything else would then be farmed out to other providers.
That's where I was questioning that, the limit and the time involved in this. Just one last question. This in-house maintenance will be performed during normal business hours, or will this person work staggered shifts, say from noon to 8, when some of the vehicles can be serviced, when they can be serviced when they're not needed?
Yeah, it's a phenomenal question, sir. I appreciate you bringing that up, and it's something honestly we have not yet looked at. We've not gone down that road just yet.
Okay.
However, I think that's a great thing to bring into play as we go forward in managing this.
One more question. Through the years, Public Works has always been the stepchild when it came to people. And if you look at slide number 8, it continues to be the stepchild. When we switched a Public Works person to the Recreation Department, we're actually down the number of people from 2019 to our proposed budget now. Now we're going to take another person off the road of what Public Works' core responsibilities are. And I remember past presentations that showed Public Works has, I don't know how many thousands of square feet more facilities to care for and lawn maintenance, et cetera, than it had before. So now, in essence, what we would be doing, if this is a separate position, we take that person off the road. Now we're saying we're going to go down to 10 equivalent employees. And there's no recommendation in the budget to add a person in spite of adding these responsibilities. Are you okay with that?
Yes, sir. And I'll explain it to you why I am. When I came here just over 90 days ago, started this job, you're absolutely right. One of the first things I saw was Public Works was lowest rung on the ladder, it seemed. My job here right now is to change that. And the way I'm changing that is I am pushing down accountability. I'm pushing down responsibility to my guys. They're taking on more. We are reorganizing in such a way that I can utilize my team more efficiently to get out and do the things that they need to do. So I see where your concern is at, but I believe that my staff can handle this. We get the right person in this job, which will be our goal. I don't see it being that big of an impact to us. For instance, if we were going to pursue our stormwater and roads division, same idea, right? We'd have to take from the folks that I have in my department right now to go out there and do that work as well, right? So we're working through that as well. But I agree that it seems to be a concern, and I have indeed looked at that. And one of the things to bring up to you right now, we're already in discussions with the Greenery, who does a large portion of our landscaping and yard work out here right now, to take on more. So if they take on more, that takes some off of my staff that I can move them around and do other things that Public Works should be doing. Honestly, Public Works is more than just cutting grass and picking up trash.
It is.
So we need to move in that direction, sir.
And is that in the budget? I'm sorry, John.
As far as the greenery, that's
Greenery is not free.
no. We understand that. That's something that will be discussed at a later date with the council as to what our plans are.
To answer the mayor's question, it is in the budget. You do have it as part of your facilities maintenance.
Yes.
We added that.
Oh, okay.
I agree
John,
with the
I'm
mayor.
sorry.
I
No,
just-
go ahead.
I'm just gonna dovetail on your question. What more can the Greenery do that they're not already, because I know they're doing the landscape, and what more do you want them to do or expect or asking them to do?
So the way that we have our staff established right now, our ground staff, is we have certain areas within the city they're responsible for. So we've looked at the Greenery taking over certain areas that our guys work in, taking particularly along 17, from the intersection up here all the way down to 95, exit 5, up towards the post office area, and then all the way down 46, all the way to Jenkins Avenue, both sides of the road. So we're looking at those areas, having them come in and take over that. That will free up my guys' time to go out and do these other things that we need to do, that Public Works is responsible for.
To build on that, for as much as appreciative as it is, you had two gentlemen on 278 today mowing that median. Just a guesstimate of that, that's probably 12 man hours, 2 pieces of equipment, actually 3 in a truck doing that. That's the state's responsibility.
Yes, sir, it is.
I don't know what the answer is. It does improve the Hardeeville. This is what it's all about. But those are 12 man hours that were not being taken care of on responsibilities that are yours.
Yes, sir.
And if this is going to continue and we are going to continue to improve our city, we're going to have to grow our public works. I'm not really in favor of farming more out to the Greenery. I'm an in-house person. I like that.
Sir.
The last point I would make, a year ago, we heard a very convincing presentation about going with enterprise and didn't work the way we wanted it to. Now we're hearing a very convincing presentation about bringing this in-house. And I think what you said is true for you too, and that is the accountability is pushing down on your department and you to make that work. And it didn't work with enterprise the way we wanted. And it's just make sure that you've got the capability to do that, because if you don't, it's another false start, so to speak.
Yes, sir. Great point. I think farming it out to enterprise or any other entity to do this type of work, what I think ultimately happens is the city no longer becomes a priority. For me, as Public Works Director, the city is a priority. So the city vehicles are priority. We'll get them in, we'll get them out, and we'll take care of them. And we will work through the logistics as to how we do that.
I believe you.
I think we can move on to the funding thing.
Folks, yeah, I still got a slide, don't I? There we go. Okay. So with this final slide here, we're just talking about, okay, how do we do this? Looking at potentially buying out the lease with Enterprise, and we discussed this with you the last council meeting, $1 million roughly. I think it's a little bit more than that. The proposal on the table right now with the staff here is proposing that we borrow the money and we pay over 5 years to finish off the lease of these vehicles, and then after that we own them. We own them outright. As such, it was a big hard hit to say, hey, let's just write a check for $1 million plus at the last meeting, and that didn't seem to go over well. So this is perhaps a compromise as to how we would go about this. So it'd be about $230,000 a year, roughly, to pay this off over 5 years. And then again, the personnel, equipment, tools, and inventory again anticipate some cost savings from what we are going to do as far as the maintenance and repair of vehicles go. And over time, that will pay for itself. So we're saying the $100,000, 2 to 3 years, we should be able to pay that down. What it would cost to stand up this at Public Works.
Keep moving.
No questions?
Actually, I do have a question. With the enterprise contract, is there any way we can go after them for non-performance and claw back some of that money?
It's a great question. I would like to say there is, but typically when you get into situations like this, the amount of money we would put in it to go after them and have them come to the table and maybe too much. I don't know. I would look towards Prina to help us understand that a little bit, but I think it's something that's already been looked at. Whether we pursue that or not, I think that's above my pay grade at this moment. So.
I suspect they would have some non-performance issues with us too.
Sure.
As
Oh,
it
they would
always.
make it that way anyway.
Yeah.
So that, you're right. I think that's a Prina question. Prina, do you have any opinion?
So I did speak with, when reviewing this contract with Jody, and John, I believe, had given some information. And we looked at it. The risk you take here is if we go to litigate it, there's a provision in there that has a specific performance clause. So in the end, you'd end up having to perform on the contract. So financially, I think it makes sense if you're able to buy out the contract as opposed to spending money to litigate the issue where you might get the same result.
A suggestion would be then is to try to negotiate that dollar amount. For every dollar that you save on this is a possibility of another dollar goes back for Public Works for the tooling, equipment, and personnel that you're going to need.
Absolutely. Anything else? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
We need to move on to the operating budget.
I have,
Sorry?
before we go, I have some questions that were raised in the first section, our statements from the city manager that I guess does pertain to the next few slides because they're incorporated into that. My first question is, in that there is an 8.58% cost of living increase for city employees. How is that calculated?
Every year we go into, it's one of the federal job sites. I think it's a part of the census. We go back and we look, and year over year we make the same comparison. If you remember, a couple years ago it was 5 something. It was 0.97 1 year since I've been here. This year, same methodology and everything. It's 8.58.
What's the methodology? I think my question. I don't
The question is,
understand.
we look at what we did for this year is we looked at what was the factor, and I'd be happy to show my work on this. What was the factor at the end of December of 21? What was the factor at the end of December of 22? And what is the difference? And then that's the calculation that's the number that we use to calculate the rate. It's effectively a CPI.
CPI. So what
Yeah, from the Serban, it's part of the And it's more specific to our area. It's part of the Southern Urban Index.
The reason I asked the question, that's a very generous increase. And based on a couple of figures that I looked at, the current rate of inflation is 6%. The average increase in America, according to Google, is like 4%. So this is well above not only the rate of inflation, but what's being given throughout the rest of the country. And I don't know what's being given by other municipalities. And I want to be fair, but I don't want to, if the rest of the world's given 4 or 5 and we're given 9, that doesn't seem to be proportionate. Do we have some sort of data so that it's not speculation? What are other communities given as pay increases, and how are they calculating the increase?
Yeah, Harry, I don't know what other communities are doing, but what we did, it's like when I got here and when you got here, and the council agreed to give annual cost of living index increases, we use the same index. So you plug it in year by year. As an example, I think the Social Security increase that people are going to get over 8% for next year. So we use the same index, plug in the same figures, and and the whole philosophy, you know this. I have a basket of goods this year, it cost me X. Basket of good last year cost me Y. That the same amount of money, I can buy the same level of goods. That's the index that we use. Southern Urban Index is a CPI index. So I don't know what some communities give cost of living, some don't. And I don't know what they base. I mean, we could do some research and find out what everybody else is doing. But we've consistently said, if we're going to give cost of living indexes, because we want our employees to keep up with being able, to do the same and live the same amount of life, we're going to use this index moving forward. We've done it since, 2015, I think.
What you're saying, Mike, that index, whatever it was, you use that, and this is the index for this particular.
Exactly. And we can provide 10-year or 8-year history of what we've done, what it's been and what you granted over the last 8 years.
To back
You
up,
recall, I think John said, 2 years ago or 3 years ago it was 0.97. And then last year it was 5.08. And then other years might have been 2% or 3 point, I don't know, whatever. But we can provide all that, Harry.
Yeah, I'd like to see it because, again, trying to look up the information I have.
Harry, I was surprised when we did
annual
the calculation. I was surprised at how, but again, what the inflation rate it's been over the last 2 years. I mean,
It's
crazy.
6% now, and the annual CPI for the last 12-month period was 6%. So, now that's why I question it, and I think before I make a judgment, I'd like to see how this is calculated. I think that would be because what I'm getting off the internet and what you're saying are quite a bit different.
our inflation rate changed.
Right. We'll provide that, Harry. And give you the
Let's
history
go over
plus-
that. And here, I want to take it a step further. Whatever that number is, and that's a big number. From everything I've looked up, that's more than what the rest of the world is giving in pay increases. Now, if that's not a correct statement, please correct me, do some research and correct me. But just going on the Googling, it seems a lot higher. Now, at the same token, that pot of money, and I don't care if it's $2 million, $1 million, I'm not saying we shouldn't spend it. I'm not looking to save money. What I am going to suggest, though, is that a more comparable pay increases to what the inflation rate and the CPI is, according to the internet, and then use that money to, we have problems recruiting police officers. Do we have open positions?
We always have open positions.
Right, exactly. So rather than just give everybody an across the board very high increase, shouldn't we be using some of the money that we have for pay increases to raise the salaries of positions that we have difficulty recruiting? And that can be a rhetorical question. I'm not trying to be confrontational or even look for an answer. What I'm giving you is some questions for you to look at and look at a different way of doing it. The reason I asked about the salaries, we have a position request also in the first thing for an athletics program director that's going to cost in the mid-50s. But we're paying our starting police officers, according to this book, who are going out there, going through rigorous training in serious danger, and we're paying them $43,000. I don't get that. I understand that position may require that amount to recruit somebody, but I'd rather put $55,000 towards another police officer and perhaps some of give a 6% raise to everybody, which covers the cost of living, and give the critical positions, the more like the police officers who are dangerous. I remember one person said, I wouldn't get out of bed for that money, much less, have a gun pointed at me every day. So I think we need to look at this a different way. I'm only suggesting it. I'm giving you something to think about and perhaps come back to report on.
Let me just add one other point. The other factor that comes into here with all salaries is the compression problem, where you recruit in this particular year, and then all of a sudden, the people that have been there for the second year, they were not hired at the same, so then you've got another problem, and it's called compression. But I think we could look at this, and I think Harry's right. This is worth a kind of a side discussion on this, because it's a tricky question and recruiting and all that. And I'd like to set some time aside to do that in the next couple of weeks to do that. I have an interest in that.
Right. Absolutely. Well, a couple and Harry, and I think you know this, but I'm sorry.
I just a quick question to John. The numbers that you use, the 8+%, those were accurate as of January 1. Now our budget year starts in July. I think that's the adjustment possibility, or
Steve, it's always the previous 12 months. We use the same calendar time moving forward, so it's always behind, a year behind.
Consistent methodology.
I think we need to take a look at our methodology then a little bit
that.
to adjust, because we can be over and we can be caught short. They always say you can't live on last year's salary. Well, sometimes you can't guarantee next year's salary with it either. And I agree with the mayor that maybe we need to look at some of our positions, because retention is a problem with our police officers currently. And it's a very important position to be losing and hiring in. We don't need the revolving door.
Two quick things on that. We can spend more time at, later date talking specifically about it, and we can provide it. We had a really deep dive in the compensation plan over the last 6 months. I don't remember exact date, but both the police and fire group, they all got raises because we looked at other communities. So that's one thing, dealing with the compensation, the compression issue. And then second, we formally adopted a certification program. So if I had an associate's degree related to my job, bachelor's degree, I got a certain certification, they got compensation. So now we're offering all those incentives, to keep people and attract people. So I understand what you're saying. We can provide all that to the council, but we are understanding that we're competing against all of our neighbors for a very limited pool of talent and anything else. And that's a question on that, Harry.
You're reinforcing exactly what I said. We're
Right.
Our police department is we're competing against the police departments, the sheriff departments,
Absolutely.
of the entire area, and they have to go through a rigorous training. They have to be qualified before they even go up to Columbia to go to the thing.
Absolutely.
And you know, we're trying to hire them for substantially less than we hire, you know, a recreation person. And not that, you know, the recreation person is a nice want, but we need police officers. That's more a need, and it's more an immediate need. And I'll springboard off the one more thing. I think that we have been kicking this can down the road, relatively speaking. We've been hiring police officers, but that let's take care of the overtime problem in the police department before we take care of the fire department, because we've increased the fire department from when I got here as mayor, there were 26 fire department people. In that 7 years, we're now up to 56. We've put a lot of money into the fire department, and I don't question that. Our fire department is first rate, and I applaud it. But it's time for the police department to get up to speed and to get salaries that will recruit and retain them, and I don't think we're doing it. I am going to push, and I'd like you to prepare for the next thing. I think we need more police officers and less firefighters, an accounting clerk, and a recreation person. Let's take care of the absolute need first before we take care of the wants. And I'm paraphrasing. It's one of Bo's famous statement. And I think the need for police officers and giving them salaries that will recruit them to our city needs to be looked at a little more closely. And I think, and I'm sure we need an accounting clerk, John. I don't question that.
I understand. No,
But because the budget got bigger, maybe we need a bigger calculator, but it's still the same calculations. It's the same number of people. We can do without, you know, a baseball program for another couple of years because we haven't had one for ages. And so all I'm saying is, me personally, I want to put the police department in the forefront before anything else this year.
And I hear you, sir.
I will be pressing that issue at the next workshop.
Understand.
So
I guess just philosophically, Mayor, I agree with you. I understand your perspective, but you know, I guess it's all in your interpretation and your perspective of wants versus needs. I know everybody needs people. We're a growing community. So and you employ me to make recommendations on what is the best staffing for our community. So, I'm do that, and I plan to do that, and we can have, and obviously we can have philosophical differences, and I understand what you're saying. So we will, and again, it's a council decision on where the staffing should be. But as an example, and I know you talked about the athletic position, that's one of the few positions that there's actually a return on investment. I mean, public employees, I mean, they provide a public service, but you're not looking at dollars and cents. If I run these programs, I'm going to bring in this amount of revenue, and I challenge Jen, and she can, you know, she's got the figures. That's one of the few programs that actually brings in revenue to the city. So you say that we're going to spend 50 grand, well, we might bring in 100 by all the programs that person will run that we won't be able to run without it. So, I mean, other than a grant person or somebody else, I mean, that's one of the few positions that actually brings in revenue to the city. Understand? And then obviously recreation, you're comparing, you know, all the public services we provide. But I understand exactly what you're saying, Mr. Mayor. All right, John. Anything else, sir?
No, that's my questions from the opening pages. So, but they all have impact on the next couple of pages, which is why I wanted to bring them forward.
Go ahead, John.
Okay, so what you see here is where we ended fiscal year 22 with the different funds and then the different departments. And then what we project at this point for fiscal year 23, you see for the general fund departments, you'll see the status quo requests that were made by the department heads. And then you'll see the city manager's proposed budget for the different revenue streams, total revenue of 53,603. You see your general fund and departments with expenditures of 28,344, almost 345. And then on the next slide, you'll see the total expenditures, again, incorporating your A-tax and H-tax and the DA fees and so forth. Comes up with total expenditures of 54,388 and a difference of $785,166. Then moving forward, you see the bottom half of that page. You see the fund balance, the general fund balance, then less the and for 22, it's the actual unspent ARPA funds. Then for 23 and 24, it's the projected unspent ARPA funds based on some of the things that are you'll see in the latter pages. And then our land acquisition fund projections, as well as the economic development fund that's cut off there. Apologize for that. Those balances. And then the budget stabilization, which again is your rainy day fund. We call it the budget stabilization fund. That's 20% of the annual expenditures, and that's for the cataclysmic event, a hurricane or something major like that. And that is in keeping with what GFOA suggests.
Harry, is it okay for us to ask questions on this? Would you prefer?
I think this is open. I took the liberty of answering questions by the page.
Very good.
It's fair game. He's up there. He's got the bullseye all over his chest. So
I was wondering what that red dot was.
you know,
I have a question for you, John. And it's tacking on to the discussion we were just having about the police department. And if I look on the line item police, and we look at the status quo number of 151, and I'm just going to use the first numbers, and then you see it's about $100,000 less. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
And the question is, as I heard you explain it, status quo means doing exactly what we're doing and nothing new.
Yes, that was where we asked the department heads to do exactly that. If you did nothing new, what would it look like next year? And they came to us with their estimates. That's their initial estimate. Over time, that gets refined. It's not going to, as you continue to research things, city manager, deputy city manager, and I, we kind of pick at it a little bit and ask more questions. And you see the numbers, in many cases, go down a little bit because, as when I do my departmental budget, I'm rounding up, not rounding down, and the department heads do the same.
I can't say that
Squeeze it.
I didn't look at it as carefully, but I'm glancing. That was the only one that I saw go down, I thought, from the proposed status quo to proposed. It's about $100,000. And did something get left out, or was there a
No, the status
renegotiation on that? And I'm not defending or picking on Sam or you guys. I'm just curious, because that was the only one I noticed that went down.
Well, there's a number of things that you see in there is, like if you look at general government, there were things that weren't necessarily in the status quo budget that are in next year's budget, whether it be more outside services, consulting fees, legal fees, whatever. You look at other departments, like you see Wands came in, it looks like rounding, it was $1 more. Some of the other ones you see, like Public Works, when they came in with the status quo number of just right at the 1 million there, and then you go up for 1,116,000, and then you see what they had. Well, that could be an equipment ad or any number of things. So it's that the status quo is if we got nothing new, we didn't get any new tool, any new equipment or anything like that. But then the city manager's proposed is going to have, well, yeah, you're gonna get a position or two or whatever it might be.
Okay.
Long-winded, sorry about that.
The critical issue is where we don't want to reduce money to create a safety issue or something like that. And I know that you know that. And I'm just when I looked at it, I said, I hope we're not compromising on the safety area to make a budget.
No, no, sir.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, following your instructions, I'm going to keep moving unless y'all jump in.
Okay, just so I don't forget, I made a note for the next workshop. And maybe it's in all these line items, which, by the way, I really like.
Okay.
Is it here, or can you prepare for the next workshop? I'd like to see the overtime number in the PD and fire departments.
I already have a note to that effect. Yes, sir. We'll
Oh, you have it. Okay, thank you.
keep rolling.
Roll unless somebody stops you.
Right.
Okay. So now we're going to jump into debt service. And one of the things we've been trying to do is give you a consistent presentation year over year, so hopefully it becomes a little more familiar and a little more easy to follow. You see for the City Hall, you see that 91,000 and change is highlighted. That's simply highlighted because that'll fall off in fiscal year 24. And the other thing that I would note is the USDA note. We made a large principal payment towards the end of last year. We anticipate making another large principal payment this year. Our hope is that we may be able to even pay it off during this fiscal year. That is the about 8 down there. I could help you a little bit here. This one right here, for the library. That's a 30-year note, supposed to end in 46. We're just trying to go ahead and pay that off. That's all DA fees, so as we accumulate them, we're trying to pay them off. And if you go down to the next section, you see the proposed additions in fiscal year 23. That's the $1 million we talked about for the police department renovation. That would be a 20-year note. That would be at 5%. And you'll see when Sam comes up and talks about that project, we're learning a little bit more about all these projects as we go. But that was what we talked about 2 council meetings ago. And then the proposed additions for 24, the first is vehicle replacement and additions. That's new. That doesn't have anything to do with enterprise. That's new vehicles for the current year, going back to the way we used to do it rather than lease them through enterprise. We would be purchasing these outright as we needed them. And then you see the Fire Station 82 renovation, which we've already touched on. The 1.6 was in there because that's what we had talked about a couple of weeks ago as to what we thought the cost would be, and we've just learned more and more, and that project could morph into any of a handful of different options. And then finally, the enterprise lease buyout, which we've touched on previously, and John Brown did a great job talking about the enterprise lease buyout. The 2 5-year loans we're anticipating would be at about 4%. We haven't shopped them yet, but that's what we're being told the market's going to do. And again, the fire department, Fire Station 82 renovation, similar to the police department renovation, with it being a longer term, we anticipate that'll be about a 5% rate.
John, I know that the municipalities have certain legal restrictions
Sir.
in terms of the amount of debt that we can take on. Could you explain for the council, and I think we have 2 new council members, what is our legal limit of debt, and where are we in relation to that limit?
I could address put everybody to their second tab in their book. There's a thing that says Fast Facts. The big purple button at the bottom of that page addresses exactly that question. At the end of last year, we were just under 4% for our debt limit. For the coming year, my estimate of what it would be is we would be under 2% of what our debt limit would be.
So that's where I get a little confused. That number of loan amount, loan is debt in my little,
Yes, sir.
in my mind, and that says bottom line, 29 million and this says 7 million. What's different?
Well, the debt limit is calculated as a function of the appraised value and so forth. The 2%, the 4% that I was talking about, the only thing that goes against that or is compared against that is the GO debt, and the only thing we have there is is that USDA note. So as like last year, we made a big, I think it was a $400,000 payment to pay that down. So we drove down our utilization. We're only using a very small percentage of it anyway. And then the one piece of it that we're doing, we're making big principal payments to pay it down with the idea of paying it off hopefully by the end of the current fiscal year.
So our general obligation debt is only 7 million. Is that what this says?
The limit is 7. The amount
Oh,
that we're
this
allowed to
is
borrow up
debt
to is
margin
7 million.
means the limit that we're allowed to
Is yes,
incur.
that's that $7 million number. Yes, sir.
And that is 3.5% that is
We're
allowed
only using 3.5%
of that debt limit.
of that limit.
So the 3.5%, which of all these loans
Just that.
are, that's the only one
Yes, sir.
that is a general obligation debt?
Yes.
And all these other ones, they're like fire trucks. Why is that not, is that because?
Those are not secured with the full faith and credit of the city? Only that library debt is.
Okay, so that, the fire trucks is, what's that, development agreement fees is?
Well, yeah, it could be any. It could.
Yeah, so a lot of these are revenue bonds, so we attach it to activity. Repayment by development agreement fees. Or are there other secured revenue sources of the city? So we're pledging anything but our full faith and credit. So let's say we default on that library loan, we don't have any other source to pay it, then it goes on your taxes. So that limit that Mr. John is talking about is general obligation debt. Every taxpayer in the city is liable if we would default. All these other ones are other sources of revenues, not tax revenue.
Okay, so I had, let's continue. I had some notes on that fast facts page. I think that's what it is, the fast facts. And you list major projects. So, Station 82 renovation, that will be development fees and not general obligation debt?
It will be neither. It will be. It won't be the general obligation. We'll just borrow the debt, just like if you were borrowing for a home renovation.
But it'll be debt
It'll be debt, but it won't be the GO debt that will go up against this.
against the limit.
Correct.
So we're borrowing more, but we're just not, they're just not categorized in the legal framework of general obligation.
Correct.
And so we would have to borrow for the Station 82 renovations?
The station itself,
And the fire trucks would
the
be.
truck, just the equipment. It's like a mortgage on the property almost.
And Argent Shortcut intersection, they were development fees, right? The Argent Boulevard and East Argent Parkway, that was obligated by the East Argent Company, but Jeff Coggins, right?
Development fees coming from.
Development fees.
When we get into the CIP, one of the suggestions, I think it was made by council, I think it might have been by you, was you'll see 2 pages of the city manager and all the projects he's recommended with what the funding was going to be. And then the following 2 pages show the projects that the city manager is recommending and the funding source. So we're covering it here, and then it's also going to be in the CIP discussion.
Okay. Just one other thing, I guess this is CIP too. We discussed it at a council meeting and actually approved it. But Mr. White made a point, and I subsequently spoke to Mike, should we not, before we move ahead with this police department renovations, look at the bigger picture and see what the long-term solution, because, you know, the chief said that was a 3-year fix, and Mr. White questioned whether or not,
A Band-Aid.
the Band-Aid.
Came behind the woodshed
we
after
not-
that.
Should we?
Yeah, I think he wants to retract his statement, Mr. Police Chief.
Well, whether it's 3 or 8, Mike, the point is, should we not look at what the long-term goals are in terms of capital improvements for, particularly for the police department, because this is, you know, like the second renovation we're going to, at least 2. And shouldn't we look at, okay, what do you need? I've heard 48 million, I've heard 40 million, you know, I've heard some numbers
We're gonna hear
here.
another story today.
Yeah.
I said less than a minute, tell it, so it better be quick, but go ahead, I'm sorry.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we be looking at the big picture? And one step further, I've heard you say several times about putting a building behind here. Well, I don't know that certainly not me, but whether or not this council has ever been presented that idea or agrees with that idea.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that we talked about on the property we bought on White Hardy Boulevard was maybe that's where we should put a whole new municipal building. So those kinds of conversations, I think we need to know what the end goal is so that we can create a path to it. That's all I'm saying.
And a lot of that's, Mr. Mayor, will be done in that CIP presentation.
Okay.
That we're gonna come up with it very shortly, but I agree with you. So, but just to digress on the existing facility, I think that's been looked at. There's only so much room you can expand that existing facility. But you did bring up, and we don't want to get into executive session, but I think there's opportunities that we can pursue that would allow expansion of the existing police department. Not,
I understand.
you know what I'm saying? So again, maybe not a public discussion, but a more of a executive session discussion, but I agree with what you're saying.
The point is, I think we need to look at the big picture
Exactly.
before we start putting little pieces together.
That's
And-
true.
And that was Mr. White's point, I believe, at the last meeting.
Absolutely. We agree.
Right, instead of piecing little things and,
Do we want to move forward with the CIP?
first I want to ask the council, do you anybody need a break? Okay,
We'll take a 5-minute break, Mr.
give
Mayor.
us 5 minutes. Don't all rush to the donut box. I don't want any injuries.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, a lot of the questions you mentioned about looking at all of the possibilities and everything, when you look at the CIP that's in your book, and I don't mean to say that nobody has, I'm just saying, just as a reminder, all of those projects are in there. So you'll see the police and it's no longer a police building, it's an emergency, it's police and fire, and what that might look like. You'll see that as one of the proposals. And
No, but we as a council have never blessed any particular plan.
that's right, because it's never,
Because it's
to
never
date, it's not been
come
recommended by
to
the
us.
city manager to come forward to you guys.
Right, exactly. So that's like,
Yeah.
taking that big picture
Yeah, and that's
view.
that's why we have the CIP the way we do, is to lay out all that we might do over the next 5-year period.
And have I read every line of this book? I got it Thursday
Sir,
night
if you
before a
haven't, don't
3-day
tell me.
weekend, holiday weekend. I didn't read
It's a
every
couple of
line.
months of my life in there, sir. So,
let's get back to work.
I like it.
Go.
Okay, so what we are on page 19 of your slides, and what you see here is page 19 just talks about the capital improvement plan, that it contains all the projects, purchases, equipment purchases, and so forth that staff recommended or requested. They requested 54. City manager, I think, agreed to fund all or part of 33 of them. That's what this slide tells you. The next slide, if I could just real quick, this slide is in the next page, or 72 and 73 of your book, if that's easier to read. And then these two are pages 74 and 75 in your book. The difference being, on this page, you see you've got the project and then the 5+ years funding for each of the projects, and then you see what the city manager recommended. On the next two pages, you see, and this was the recommendation we got at the last, or the budget update, you see I've hidden the columns that are not 24, showing what the city manager is recommending, and then I'm showing the funding source going across. And that is, you'll see that information on 74 and 70. So what we're prepared to do now is show everybody the projects that the city manager has recommended, and then any projects after we go through them, we would be happy to talk about if you want to know something about something that is not currently recommended in the city manager's budget. We're going to go by department, and the first one we're going to do there is Mr. Davis is going to walk through the general government project.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Bullseye on me now.
Yes, big red dot.
I didn't want to feel left out, Mayor. Okay.
Could you take your jacket off so we can make sure we hit you?
We're working on some. We have a mouse in the mix. We're trying to get a mouse in the mix. Okay, here we go.
Okay. All right. I'm going to run through the general government CIP projects. The first one is the municipal hub / Veterans Park. As you know, we just recently awarded the contract for the design services for the Veterans Park portion of the hub master plan, which is as you can see in the detail sheet, a multi-year project. And the city manager has recommended funding $350,000 towards that. That was obviously less than what I had put in for the request. But again, there's only so much money, a lot of needs. So, but that's certainly, once we get it designed, we can certainly get going with some site work and things like that, whatever it takes. So, we'll move along. Obviously, this is going to probably take longer than we would hope for it, the entire master plan implementation, but that is where we are, unless we fall into a great deal more money. So I'm just going to move along through all of them unless you have any questions you want to shout it out. That's okay, because there's a lot of projects for everyone to go through. I think 33 of them. So
The Highway 170 corridor, we approved $500,000 from DA fees to put to the fund with Beaufort and Jasper County. Is that?
That's actually it's not DA fees. It's that Good Neighbor Fund from Beaufort County.
Oh, okay.
If you remember, they offered it, then they took it back.
And they took it back.
And then they re-offered it.
And then they gave it back, and now we're giving it back to them.
Yes, sir.
Right,
Yes,
okay.
so I can go, if you just have questions about the list there under General Gov, I can talk about them, or I can go through them, whichever way you'd prefer to do it.
The White Hardy Boulevard plan is,
That's
what
under
page
planning.
is that in? That's under planning.
Ms. Snowden will talk about that.
Okay.
I think just going through them since you have them there.
Okay,
Ryan.
sure. Because I did want to talk about the project, the City Hall expansion project that we have. If you will recall, in this current fiscal year, we actually budgeted $500,000, and we still hope to spend a portion of that. I'm drafting an RFP right now to several of your points here just a few moments ago. We're going to put out an RFP for a space and needs study for a professional to do that. Come in, ask all the right questions, look at what we already have, the systems, not just the physical space, but the systems within those buildings, so we can plan for the future with as much information from all the experts as we possibly can. It's going to determine, how big a space we need for a city hall, or Public Works, or even, if does recreation need more space, or what the police department, the fire department's going to look at all those. So we're drafting that that RFP right now. We hope to have that issued certainly before the end of this fiscal year. So we're going to do that and then continue to move forward and with the council's guidance, of course, identify where that where like in a new city hall should be, or an addition, or whatever the case may be, and we'll move forward then with funding with a design for that. But that's the plan there. But that study is going to be key to kind of dictating how we move forward. Also, while recognizing that we have some immediate needs as well that we have to address in some manner, because we continue to add people, and the volume keeps picking up. So that's what we're doing for that. Argent Boulevard shortcut intersection, that's all development fees that about the tail of that. I'm actually, just so you know, I am preparing a statement to put on our website about where we are when what's happening and everything. So just so everyone, the public's aware, we're hearing a lot from them, but that is all development fund fees that we'll pay.
And you'll put on there, do not call the mayor, call you. Right? Okay.
I feel like they already do.
Okay.
I have a lot of pen pals.
Uh,
I know, and that's fine. I mean, I'm confident that we've done what we can do, and we've been diligent. It's frustrating, but anyway.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I made a note and then I forgot to ask the question, but is there any way that DOT would agree to put up that light before all this other stuff goes on?
My hunch is going to be no, because the stipulation all along was that those lane improvements be done, because, one of the things it's going to do, right now it's an offset intersection, which makes it even worse. So with these improvements, it kind of squares up that intersection. I think until that happens, they are not going to do that, because the lights will be in such a manner, they're not going to be aligned with where the current lanes are if you did that. So we're hopeful, again, please, we are very, very hopeful that we can work something out with DOT and get this thing moving. And that's all I can say at this point, but we're working on it. Highway 17, Argent Boulevard at East Argent Parkway. That's again, development fees. That's currently underway. That's the design fees. Right now, that intersection is being designed with all the turn lanes. It doesn't warrant a signal at this moment because there's not enough traffic coming out of the Riverton area. But eventually, once that road is completely connected, it will. But we're going to go ahead and do that. The funds exist. Then once it's designed, to go ahead and permit it and get those lane improvements done. And then as soon as the warrants are met, then the signal can be installed and everything will be in place for that to happen. So that's what that is. The City Hall reception area upgrade, quite frankly, this was, we just feel that we deal with a lot of folks here coming into our city to invest and potentially invest in our city. And we need a more professional looking environment to entertain some of these folks, and spending a little bit of money, I think, makes a lot of sense and makes us look serious and that we're the big time. So that was where that suggestion came from. So I would hope you would agree with that. And then finally, the last one is the citywide signage upgrades. That's actually a J.D. McMahon.
That wasn't one of the ones that was.
Oh, it's right here on my sheet. You didn't fund it. Okay, I'm done. Sorry. Yes, we'll talk about that in another year. I was on a roll. Anyway.
So it's Sam's turn.
Well, let's see if the council has any questions. It's another time. Mr. Chief Woodward, step up to the mic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same rules apply. If nobody stops you, move on.
I was giving him the hurry up. And
John, didn't you give him the instructions? Nobody asked, get out of there quick.
Oh, it's got Jody's project.
Oh, Matt, could you come back? No, I'm kidding.
Renovation. Whew. As you know, we've asked for expansion at the police department, where we're adding the vault that is in dire need to house all this evidence for years and years to come. Also, we're adding a detective's office and a conference room in the existing bay we already have there at the police department, and plus adding a storage facility for our SUV vehicles and stuff like that also in the back. And like the city manager said earlier, that's the only room we have left on the property right now to be able to do this. You talked about the renovation at the police department that we did before. As I stated earlier in the month about when we had our other budget workshop, that most of that renovation that was done at the police department was done in the court system, not in the actual police department. So again, this is a much needed space. It's needed by the police department to keep growing. Again, I might have misspoken about the time frame, about how much time we're going to have with this renovation. We could stretch this out as long as we need to, and hopefully with the growth of the city and all like that, and we're going to talk about it later on this afternoon about our new police department that we're asking everybody to look at, and it's a public safety building now, not just a police department. So we'll be talking about that. Okay.
So you got taken to the woodshed, huh?
I'm trying to keep a job.
You got taken to the woodshed over that statement.
I heard that woodshed statement, so I'm.
Yeah, I heard you. I heard that thing thrashing.
The next thing we want to talk about is the training facility out at Pewsburg. We have an old house out there that the fire department used a while back to do some fire stuff and all like that, and I spent some money to have the roof fixed and everything, so we could go in and do training in that old house. But it's come to our notification the termites love the house better than we do. So we're going to talk about having the fire department go burn that down, and we had $20,000 budgeted last year, or in this past year's budget, to put a concrete slab and everything down, and we're asking for a metal building to go up on that concrete slab for this year's budget, so that we can now go in there and use that building and put in what we call false walls to move them around, so we can have our entry team enough go in there and do training. And like I said, we use that facility, not only us as the police department, but we have other agencies come in and use that facility also, from Chatham County, Bluffton, Jasper County. All those agencies come in and train with us at that facility. So I think it's something great that we can move and make it even better. And I think we talked with the fire chief about when they get their renovation done out at the fire station, we might be able to move that trailer that they're living in now out to that facility and have a classrooms and stuff like that out there also. So that's why we're asking for that.
I made the other agencies that use this facility, have you reached out to them to see if their municipalities and governments would help contribute to this?
We have talked about that, but we have not made any kind of agreement for financial aid in that right now.
I would like if you would.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, we will. We'll try our best. Yes, sir. Okay, as you know, that our officer safety plan is something that state mandates us to have with body cameras and in-car cameras. This is something that we're going to continue right on, and every year it costs around $171,833 to keep that plan going. And we also get what they call refresh. We just got equipment in to refresh our cameras and upgrade our cameras, which didn't cost a dime for that. But we're going to start now going to the new camera systems, which, technology updates as fast as you get up every day, just about. So that's going to be an ongoing project every year. So we're going to continue that plan, and it's like I said, it's something that's mandated by the state of South Carolina for us to have to do. Any questions with the camera system? All right, as you know, we started our citywide camera system in the city. We're at our projected third year project on this. We're moving towards exit 8 right now. And we're trying to get that completed by July, our end of our fiscal year this year budget. We're asking for you to give us another year coming up to go towards Highway 278 and Argent Boulevard to extend our camera systems out that far. And we're asking for around $139,000 to get that other project done for another year. And it costs around $6,000 a year just in maintenance fees and stuff on these cameras. So we're asking you to fund that on out for the next 5 years also, but we might be coming back to you after this budget year to expand it even out towards south towards 17 out that way, because Riverport and all that property out there needs to be protected also very bad. So we're going to ask you to fund that for this year, if you will. Any question on the citywide? And also, I talked with my investigators this morning about our cameras and stuff that we have up, and they said this helped solve our crime about 70%. Help reduce our crime about 70%. So that's pretty good. That's really, I was really shocked to hear that number from the detective division, but they said, we got these cameras and they're IDing people with them. We also have what we call the flock cameras up. This actually telling us when cars are coming into the city that's got bad people in them, or they're stolen, or involved in armed robberies. And like I said, they're really helping us solve crime.
Let's, in fact, I think every one of us has heard about how bad the traffic was.
Yes, sir.
Having these cameras, concern that I've heard from 2 or 3 people already is, this one goes to both you chiefs, is the access of emergency vehicles. Camera system will help you identify where you can go as these intersections are blocked.
Definitely.
Routes.
Definitely. And like I said, we don't only our cameras are not up, but our cameras record. State cameras on the highways do not record. They do not record anything. They're just there for visual, just like you said, for dispatch to see how the traffic is backing up. Why is it backing up? Trying to figure it out. So that's what they do.
Chief, revisit, what did you say about cameras down at Riverport?
Yes, sir. I want to get cameras down as far as even right to our city limit sign at 315.
The reason I asked the question is, doesn't Riverport, the developer down there, have cameras that record every vehicle in and out of there?
They do when they're due while they're having construction. But they're moving that camera around as they build. At this building, they had it. Now they got this building going, they move it to that building. So
All I'm suggesting is, perhaps those cameras that protect Riverport be their responsibility, not ours.
well, yes, sir. We can sure ask that question, but again, it's a citywide project that we started. The police department started, and I just don't want.
Yeah, and I know eventually we would need it, but
Yes, sir.
that would, if they would take care of it now while they're building, then we don't have to do it this year. We can save it and do other parts of the city. That's all I'm suggesting is, let them take care of it now. We can use the money and take care of the rest of the city, and then eventually get to that when they're done down there.
Well, yeah, I think if you remember when we had the grand opening for Riverport down there, actually that's how I got started talking with the people down there that was putting up the cameras down there, is what brought this all to light for the city now, is when I started talking to that gentleman about their camera system, I figured, hey, this would be a great idea for the city to have. So that's where it got started at, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief.
There is no fleet. Under, it's not,
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I believe I only got a couple here today, so I'm gonna be short and sweet. The first one is what we call the Opticom system. Some of you may be familiar with this. This is a system that goes in all of the emergency vehicles. So as they approach traffic lights, it either turns them all red or turns your lane green, depends on how we have them programmed at the time. So basically, these will be put on all of the fire rescue vehicles currently with this money, and also be upfitting all of the current red lights in the city. And then after that, it's my understanding from the planning director is that any future red lights that cost would be put on to the developer that's funding the red light at that point.
Yeah.
So this is just to get us started, and right now is good because we only have a very few number of red lights that we have to retrofit. So it now while we can before we have 10 or 15 of these out there that increases this cost.
Would development fees be usable to retrofit these lights?
I'm not sure. We can research. I think the lights, there are certain ones like the Margaritaville that there's some of the money, maybe the external roads or something that may have. I'm not sure, but yes, I'm sure there's some funding that can be gotten from that. I don't know if we can fund the entire thing with that.
So do we have to go to SC.dot to put the units on the traffic lights, or we can do it ourselves?
What we'll do is we'll have to find the approved vendor that they'll allow to go out and work on
Okay.
it. And generally, the Opticom basically says they have the vendors for South Carolina. They know already because they deal with them all across the
Right,
state.
right.
They've already been approved through SCDOT, so it's pretty much a, hey, we're going to do these lights, just a notification kind of thing with.
Okay,
And then actually the Opticom people will handle that notification with SCDOT
okay.
because yes, it goes on their equipment.
Yeah. That's great, because with the traffic at all the intersections building up, I've watched,
That kind of goes into what he was saying earlier.
Yeah.
dealing with traffic.
I mean,
this-
trying to zigzag in between, people won't move. They're trying to race the ambulance down the road. They're trying to make that
Yep.
turn to save 1 second. It's crazy.
Actually have one captain that works out of Station 82 that he won't run red lights and sirens on Argent Boulevard because there's nowhere for people to go.
No,
There's literally, if they pull off the road, they're down in a ditch.
in the ditch, correct.
So especially going to Sun City, he'll just go to that first entrance and then he'll turn his lights on and go through Sun
Yeah.
City. But I'll run them on Argent Boulevard for those reasons of traffic. So
There you go, Argent Boulevard again.
the gift that keeps on giving.
And the biggest safety issue, you just heard it from the chief.
anything else on this?
No, sir.
We're moved on. Oh, this is Station 82. I believe we talked about it. We talked about all the issues and problems, and we'll be bringing some different options for you to look at and make that decision later on. But this was just a placeholder back then, and like we said, we've run into those other problems since we made this slide.
Outstanding.
All right, afternoon again from Public Works, this Roland here. So the first one you see up here is a renovation of the space that John Boyle and his staff occupy here in this building. An opportunity to make private offices for the folks that are in there. John's got one now, but requesting to add more. So that brings along with it a lot of other things, electrical, mechanical, HVAC concerns, lighting concerns, potentially structural when it comes to relocating the hallway door a little bit in order to make room for new walls and such. So it's a seems like a simple project, but could be a little bit more complicated once we get into it. Oh, I guess I'm controlling this, aren't I?
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are controlling it? Oh, okay. Okay, so the next one here, this is for RFID card readers, push arms, security cameras on all city buildings. So we're looking at putting that particularly on exterior doors and certain select interior doors as well. And so we've already started getting into this. James is helping out with talking with some contractors right now to kind of clarify, what all would that take? I mean, it's not just slapping up an RFID or a push arm. There's electrical issues that need to be considered as we go forward with this as well, and other infrastructure too. So this is one of the things that we're looking at doing. And as we bring on new city buildings in the future, we add this onto it as well. For Public Works, this is a request to basically take our parking area and provide asphalt surface for that area. We have a lot of traffic that rolls through there, all different sizes from your vehicles, sedans, all the way up to tractor trailers and other equipment. It's kind of an unsafe area out there right now. It would do us well to have good pavement. We could stripe it. We could protect the folks that are coming in and out of there. And honestly, make it a little bit more professional looking. It's a city building. We should treat it that way. This next project here, as you probably know, we have two stormwater pump stations in the city, one in McTier. This one's out on 17. This pump hasn't worked for years. We have literally had a mobile pump that we've rented every month for almost $4,000 a month to go out there and push water when we need to push water. As you probably know, stormwater is a huge issue in the city. We're studying it. We're working on it. This is a big proponent in getting that moving in the right direction. Not only is the pump costing us upwards of $4,000 a month, it's also labor intensive. I have to have one of my guys go out there and sit while that pump runs to make sure nothing happens to the pump. So there again, that's another issue that I would like to do away with by basically replacing this pump. This project here is in coordination with one of Jen's projects back here, Juju Hudson Park Phase 2. Going to add a restroom facility, picnic area. With that comes the need to provide sewer service out there as well. So we're looking into what the best method of that is right now. We have two grinder pumps, one at the turf field, the other one up by the ball fields, the softball fields. This would essentially add a third one into the system. That would need to be pushed over to the force main and out appropriately. So we're working through that right now. Fire Station 81, a lot of issues over there with the HVAC, particularly it causing condensation issues, mold issues inside that we need to work on, whether it's oversized, undersized. It's being determined right now what the best route to take with the HVAC there. But we also have other issues that we've noticed as we've investigated up in the attic area. It seems like perhaps in the construction of the facility, there was a decision made that basically left part of a wall piece out that's allowing a lot of humidity into the attic space, which then just magnifies the issue that we're having with HVAC. So we have to correct that in order to get this moving in the right direction and make it safer for the folks that are at this facility.
We
Mr.
just
Mayor, I
opened
see a
that.
question.
We just opened that. It's, what, 2 years ago?
Yes, sir. We do have condensation issues in there that have to be resolved, and it's coming from the HVAC system that we've got to get fixed. And that's called the condensation's causing the mold.
You know, I moved into a new house and I had that kind of problem. I'd be all over the builder. Why aren't we all over the builder?
We are, sir. So we're going to probably end up filing a suit against Bobbitt. We have on every facility, we got a number of issues that they have not corrected or won't correct. So we'll bring that to the council in executive session. But that's our plan, and this is one of the main issues.
That's really upsetting to hear this kind of basic problem
Sir.
on a building that we just built.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have problems with the rec center too. Bobbitt did that also, right?
Yes, sir.
We have problems with them too.
Yes, sir. So for the time being, though, we've got to correct this in order to get the safety built in for our folks
There's
that
no
are
question about that.
Roger, sir.
Christmas.
So next slide.
Yeah.
So the next slide here shows this is a sidewalk connector between Martin and Boyd. What we have out there is about a 750-foot path that doesn't have adequate sidewalk, actually no sidewalk out there right now, and pedestrians that are getting out there are literally walking in the streets. Added danger is that it's on a curve. And so people that are driving through there might not see a pedestrian in time as they're walking down this way. So putting a sidewalk in there with adequate ADA ramps, perhaps even some blinkety lights that will help people know as they come around that curve, hey, this is a pedestrian area, might be a good call as well. So, sorry, was that a wrong term? So blinkety blink lights, but you know what I'm saying, caution lights.
You lose us.
Okay, sorry about that. So putting this sidewalk in there, we feel is it's a good safety measure for the folks living over there.
John, this council asked for and approved this, I don't know, 3 years ago.
Okay.
And here we are sitting here, still not even begun. I believe this deserves a priority.
Sure.
Because we approved this, I think it was 3 years ago. I mean, I lose track of time.
Sure.
It was a long time ago.
Mr. Mayor, if you look at the second line there, council approved $300,000 for the current year.
When this first came up, when did it first come up in front of us? And Rhett gave it. It was a citizen brought this to our attention. The council said, "Go ahead and do it." And then I think it was last year when I checked on it. I was told they can't get a contractor. I think this has been going for a couple years. I don't know exactly when it was, but it's been a couple years.
Yeah,
And
it
all-
was.
So
You're right, Mr. Mayor, we've had a lot of start and stop, and I'm not gonna blame anybody, but
no, I'm not.
engineering firms and
I'm not here to beat anybody up. All I'm suggesting
agree
is
with
that
you.
this be a top priority to get it done this year.
right, absolutely. We have, I think, a dozen civil firms that you've on our pre-qualified list, where in the past we only had a few. So again, I don't want to throw anybody in the bus, but this will be a priority.
It's not Bobbitt, right?
Yeah, no, sir.
They're busy on other things. And that will meet the minimum requirements from a safety standard, putting that into this. You were
Yes,
saying
sir.
we're gonna do it. You're meaning we're gonna hire someone to do it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It'll be a contractor work. I'm not going to put my guys out there to do this.
Yeah,
This is
and
something that's
meeting
going
all
to,
the requirements
it's
of
going to
the-
take geotechnical expertise to get the base correct
I
and
don't blame you.
everything.
It's
So,
a smart use.
yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Sir, I think this is my last project here. This is back at the Public Works facility. If you've been down there, you've seen that our equipment sits outside a lot. It gets exposed to the weather. We have a lot of money in our equipment down there, and we need to protect it. So this is a way to put our equipment under cover to keep it out of the rain, to keep it out of the sunlight, essentially, so we don't have dry rotting issues and things that are going on. So this is a pre-engineered metal building concept, if you will. Minimal area prep work to put this in. We put this in, and I think we'll gain some money by doing that, simply protecting our equipment. And I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Council, again. This first project, for those of you that are new, back in 2018, we had this plan approved, and in 2020, at the height of COVID, we put the playground in. So this is phase 2, which we'll be putting in all of our stuff. And if you remember, council approved ARPA funding to cover this.
So what exactly is it, Jen?
So this
Refresh
is
my
phase
memory.
2. Phase 2, we'll be putting in the shelter and finishing up. If you go back there right now, you'll see the construction fencing. So we'll have some more shade structures for parents to sit, benches. And then we'll also do a little bit of there's like a sidewalk that goes all the way around, kind of creating like a little, not exactly a trail, but sort of a little walkway for parents. And then, of course, it has the shelter with bathrooms, which is also a return on investment as we'll be able to rent that out for revenue.
That's I don't have it in my books, 7 something.
Yes, the total is 779,500, and that is being paid with ARPA funding and DA fees.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Oh, our wonderful trail. I believe my predecessor, Mr. Addison, had worked on this before I got here back in 2017. The council approved a master plan to start with different trails. This is the product of that. This is our very first trail that the city will be doing. And I know we're in the pre-bid phase right now, which is exciting that we've actually made it to this point. We also received some state funding for this as well from SC Trails. And then the rest of this will be paid with DA fees. And we hope to have us finished here by the end of the year, if not sooner. And this is always important. I think I've been asking for this since I've got here. The city is in a very unique place, and I know a lot of folks don't want, master plans and all that kind of stuff, but those master plans are very important, not only for funding, to be able to fund our projects, but basically to have a vision of where we're going. I would love to, put pocket parks all over the city and do splash pads and all kinds of fun trails. However, in order to do that, we have to have a vision. We have to have a plan and a pathway to be able to get there. Not mincing on your words, Mr. Mayor, but the same exact thing. And this is something that's critical for quality of life. Downtown has a lot of amenities, but when you go towards 278, how are we accommodating the needs of our retirement communities that are living out there? They might have different needs than what the needs are downtown. And, as the city continues to grow in different areas and our arsenal, so I say, continues to grow, we have to have a pathway to be able to make sure that we're doing it right instead of just putting things all over the place. So it's very important that we have a strategic plan that also works with the city comp plan as well, and how we navigate that in our future.
Jen,
Yes, sir.
so you can add to your list of things you hate about me.
I don't hate you, Mayor.
Master plans are great, but from what we've seen over the last, since 2019, we're spending a lot of money on master plans that are not getting implemented. Two big examples are White Hardy Boulevard. Not a thing's been done on a master plan that was generated in 2019. We have the municipal hub. Finally, we're going to do one little piece and put the Veterans Memorial in there. And that goes back to 2019. These were maybe 2019, beginning of 20, right before COVID. So now my fear is now they ask for $250,000 for another master plan that's going to come back with a $10 million price tag, and we're going to put it in the drawer and take years before we get to it. I'm only suggesting, why don't we take the $250,000, start implementing the master plans that we already have, and do that. I'm all in favor of this bike and pedestrian thing. I voted for it. I brag about it in speeches. And I'd love to see it get going. But to take another master plan, spend a lot of money, and then not utilize it. $250,000 is a big price tag to have something that's going to sit on a shelf for God knows how many years. I think until we are ready to spend the money to implement a master plan, let's wait. That's just my opinion. We have too many sitting on the shelves, not being implemented, and I don't know how much we've paid for them, but I don't think we're ready to implement a bike and pedestrian trail that is sorely needed.
Yes, sir. I understand. All of our master plans that we do have are currently being implemented. I don't know about the others, but as far as Parks and Recreation, every piece that we have, including the Richard Gray in the back, you'll see all the improvements, all those bits and pieces. As much as we would like to be able to do them all at one time, I think all the council would probably have a heart attack if you did see that price tag. So what we do try to do is to be able to have that plan in place so that when you do look down towards the future, that you're able to plan ahead of time and you know how you can plan and budget and get all that stuff together. But it's a fair question, sir. Absolutely.
I could add to that, if you decided not to do the master plan, but take that money, in your mind as you're standing right now, do you think of some ways, hey, I could put some of it here and some of that? Do you have some things that you could redirect it to, as opposed to a plan on a shelf, to sort of take it one step further with what Harry's suggesting?
In all honesty, not really. When you think about like fire trucks and police cars and all that, there is a huge cost to it. So if you just look at our trail master plan that we have right now, I mean, to do one small trail can be up to $1 million. So we don't have that kind of funding, in the DA fees. So it'd be a bigger burden, obviously, for council to be able to find those fundings. It doesn't mean that we don't want it, but if we had the opportunity and you said no to this, then we would probably keep those funds in DA to be able to build them up so that we would have something larger. We are working with Amy as well for accommodation taxes to be able to look at some other stuff. So that might be, an issue that we can do as well to find additional funding.
What I would suggest is holding off on that, and I'd like to see the $250,000 be put towards implementation of some of the park plan that we had for the municipal hub. That also falls under the heading of Parks and Rec. That master plan has, some really nice elements to it that, again, is sitting on the shelf. And so why don't we, before we start doing another plan, why don't we start finishing the plans we already have? And that's my whole point. And we need to implement what we already have before we have another plan that sits on the shelf. And that would be my suggestion. There's parks in that hub master plan. We were going to move the train to a different spot. Let's start doing that first.
Some of the low-hanging fruit that we have and we could.
I agree, because we start downtown with our plan.
It can spark.
It can turn other things good. I think a master plan is a good idea. I just don't think now's the time for it.
The other,
There's $1 million tacked on it, Steve, is part of the master plan thinking for me.
and the other thing, and I know I'm going to beat a dead horse here, but we brought it up earlier. The traffic through downtown Hardeeville, every time there's a blip, which is almost daily, but it's worse at the holidays, it creates a traffic jam like crazy through downtown. And I came through Friday. I-95 was backed up in both directions. People were going through the side streets because they have GPS. And that's before we put 2.5 million square feet of warehousing on behind Exit 8. So all I'm saying is this: until we get the impact of all those things, including the widening of I-95, that stupid warehouse project, and all the impact that's going to have on I-95 to now, or on White Hardy Boulevard, to now put money into a master plan that you're not going to be able to implement because of all those things that are coming, I think our money's well spent in a park at the hub that's already in a plan.
Did you want to address the fees and how they're assessed?
Really? Yeah.
DA fees? Yeah. Or no?
I mean, I think everybody knows, but just to recap, and I think Steve asked something about, it was the fire. So development agreement fees, so it's an enhanced service, it's a new service as a result of growth, not replacement. So like in your example on those what do you call them?
Becomes
The light things, then that DA fees could be used for that. So anything new we could use those development agreement fees for, or expanded service.
And this is the project that we're currently working on right now at Millstone. For many of you, the second picture, the image right there might be familiar. I think it was back in 2007. There was a big push to do a plan for Millstone. We are, of course, pushing that back. And this, to your point, Mayor, is a reason why we're not doing a master plan right now, because of all the future growth that's coming in. It doesn't make sense for us to do a master plan now, because that whole area is going to change. But what we are adding is a brand new shelter. For those of you that have been down there and visited, there was an old shelter that was dilapidated. We had to tear that down, so we are replacing that. And we also received additional funding, about $40,000 from PARD. So $23,000 is coming in to cover the difference, and we hope to have that done by the end of this year. The rec center parking lot. So it's a good problem to have. Right now, our parking center, or excuse me, our rec center and the parking is a nightmare. Anytime that we have a large scale event, many of you have been there where we've had events and meetings at the same time, and it's pretty hard to find a parking space. So we do partner and work with Royal Live Oaks. They've been a wonderful partner for overflow parking. But this is something that was already budgeted when we did the recreation center. And of course, due to cost, it was taken out. So now we're adding it back in. And this will be paid with DA fees. And this is for this is again part of the piece that goes into our Richard Gray master plan. So it's not just the Juju Hudson Park, but it will be throughout the Richard Gray Park complex. And that's to add traffic calming for anyone that happens to sit here, especially those that work in City Hall. Sometimes you can see people fly down, and we do have signage all over the place, exactly what the speed limit is, but unfortunately, folks still, I don't know, I guess they just think it's a suggestion to do the speed limit and not actually the law. So this will help, and anyone doing 30, 40 miles an hour on a speed bump is going to have considerable damage to their undercarriage, so that's what we're asking for this.
Oh, it's James.
I'll do the judges. You want me to do the judges? Okay, so the judge very, very simply asked for a metal detector. Her metal detector's got a number of years on it, not functioning as she would have it. The cost is just under $7,600. It was just simply like an updated, upgraded metal detector for her courtroom. Keep her and her staff and the people who are in the court to keep them safe.
Reasonable. Should all be that easy.
Brandon, you're up.
I can't. Good afternoon. My glasses obviously need to be adjusted because I can't see back over there. I need to move a little closer. As the mayor stated, White Hardy Boulevard Master Plan implementation. The good news is that with the MZDO update, it's not sitting on the shelf. I can't tell you how many times we've been working on over the past month the zoning code and the implementation techniques that will be incorporated into the MZDO. And hopefully on this workshop on May 8th or 9th, we can present some of that to you. So that is very positive news, and we are going in the right direction. Also, the determination of some of the right-of-way standards and where the right-of-way is on White Hardy Boulevard, it varies in different areas of White Hardy Boulevard. So what we're asking for with this $125,000 is to get the engineers and the design professionals that will give us the specifics on that, so that we can move right into, as soon as we have the zoning code in place, and we can use that from the publics as they're starting to build and remodel things and working on it from that perspective. We can start with the traffic calming and the landscaping and the bulb outs and that type of thing. We didn't want to throw good money after bad by doing stuff and then have to rip it back out.
Once you do that, and then you get to the landscaping and some of that, it's kind of the next installment where we really see the beautification. What do you anticipate, just ballpark, what that will cost?
These exhibits here on the bottom do show exhibits from the White Hardy Boulevard Master Plan. There were some very specific examples in there, ways to make it walkable,
Sure.
safer, more economic development, because it's certainly a place where people want to be, more of a destination, and that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Mainly, and even with the landscaping, the traffic calming is a big inclusion. Maybe not a landscape median in the whole length of the master plan, but in certain sections, and that is the biggest thing that's going to help calm that traffic down, even when 95's a mess. So.
Thank you.
Help calm down the log trucks and semi.
Yes.
They seem to think that's the best way to go.
Yes, that type of thing has been shown to truly calm traffic as much as law enforcement can help us with that too.
It was really calm on Friday because nobody was going anywhere. So we didn't need speed bumps when it didn't go anywhere, and that's not going to improve.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon, Juan.
We are looking at maybe finding us a new place to stay. We're looking at remodeling down in the building where we used to be and moving over also into the part where the county used to be as well. And there we can expand and have studio space, have enough space for everybody to be there together. And that's what we're looking at in this.
Okay.
Okay, I like that.
Good afternoon, Council, Mayor. Best for last. All the core of our network that runs the city is over in the EOC building. As you can see from these pictures, there's a bit of a spider web going on there. Some of the technology and the wiring there is 2 generations behind. So we're going to just rip out all the old wiring, rewire the building with the latest and greatest so we can have a more stable network and an easier network to troubleshoot. That's it.
Juan, can you go back to the slides, please? Okay, so here we are on the fund balance.
John, those last couple items, what are they? 230 for enterprise.
Okay.
That's the enterprise payout. Okay. And replacement vehicles and new hire vehicles, is
That's
that
the
over and above what we're going to pay out to enterprise?
Yes, that's the one we talked about earlier. That would be the new vehicles.
So those are the ones we're buying out from enterprise?
No, sir. We're going to buy out vehicles from enterprise. And then in addition to that, we anticipate that we would purchase $764,000.
How many vehicles is that?
I want to say I had it on a sheet of paper and I've lost it. And remember now, when we buy a vehicle, it's not just like if you buy something. The new assistant police chief will get probably a Blazer or an Explorer or something like that, and it's another 60% of the cost of the vehicle just to outfit it with all the equipment and lights and everything that it needs, the radios, all of that kind of stuff. It is it was a general government vehicle, 6 for police. No, it wasn't court. One for planning, one for building, and there may be another. Yeah, I had it on my sheet and it's sitting right on my desk. I apologize.
Total, John, again.
The planned
Sorry?
vehicle
Seven
has
hundred sixty-four.
Yeah.
building, but he's not returning to the office. He'll have all the equipment there with him that he will need and, or that person will need.
They have their iPads that they carry with them.
So keep moving.
Get the exact.
No, don't get me started on vehicles.
And then, so then if we now roll to fund balance, just a quick slide that says, you see we have what we anticipate the fund balance to be after the Second Amendment was 2,584,000. We anticipate that revenues might be a little bit strong, or not might be, we anticipate that they will be strong, $532,000 stronger than we anticipated, and expenditures are going to be about $717,000 less. That leaves us at the end of the fiscal year with $3,833,000 of a fund balance. And as Mr. Simbor said in his opening remarks, very strong fund balance. Then when you go to fiscal year 24, you see that number decrease by two things. The first is the increase in the budget stabilization. As the budget grows, 20% of it has to be set aside for that rainy day fund, which we call the budget stabilization fund. And then the projected use of fund balance is $785,000. That reflects revenues over expenditures for the planned revenues and expenditures for the year, leaving us with a still healthy $2.6 million fund balance.
And the 20% total is what?
The 20% total is, it is in here. I know that I have that, sir. I thought it was 3.8. Here on page 15, it's 3,852,648.
That's in addition, Mr. Mayor, to the 2.7, plus the Economic Development Fund, plus the land acquisition. So you'd add, I mean, we used to look at it one big bucket. Remember that we separated several years ago.
Thank you.
And now we are on to millage. And what we've done with the millage is, the top part of this slide is very similar, if not exactly, what we had provided at the budget update a couple weeks ago. The current rates are 97 mills for Jasper County and 109.2 for Beaufort County. 23 is a reassessment year for Beaufort County, so their rate will change. I talked to the assessor, and she's indicating it would be at best mid-April before we had new numbers. Its reassessment will be revenue neutral, so whatever that math works out to, we will work with our Beaufort County number and still make it show the reduction to be proportionally the same as the 95 to the 92. What we're proposing and the city manager is proposing in his budget is a 2 mil reduction for Jasper County. And then, as I just said, we will extrapolate that math to reduce proportionally the same amount for Beaufort County. That is the city manager's proposal.
Hey, John, this is an aside, but last year we were required to be revenue neutral,
Correct.
right? And we actually took a decrease from that number, as you recall.
Yes.
Which you endorsed 1,000%, I recall, but
I'm here to serve the city manager. Council, sir. Yes, sir.
but at any rate, we at the time projected, because we didn't know the number, that the reassessed values would go up by, I think it was 14%, and the legal maximum was 15%.
That is correct.
So 15%, any individual home could only go up, be reassessed by 15%.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct? So, but we didn't know the final number at that time because it was just being a projection. Do we ever get the final number?
I don't have that with me, but yes, we have that, and it was in that mid to high 14 range, like we had anticipated.
So we would have homes that would have gone up 14 or 15% within the city limits. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And yeah, and I just want, the reason I'm asking, because, you know, on the next slide, I think it's the next slide,
We can go
Well-
there if you'd like.
where we see different the millages, and I think it's important because what we have done is very important, and as Mr. Seymour says, it's my favorite slide. But you know, as opposed to, I'll use the county as an example. If somebody went up 15% on a $350,000 home, in the city, their taxes went down because revenue neutral would be 98.25, and we lowered it to 97. But in the county, they lowered from 154 to 152, which if an assessed value home, let's say a $350,000 home, which is near the average, if that went up 15% or even 14% to $400,000, that person's taxes, county taxes, would have gone up from $2,156 to $2,432 because they took increases above revenue neutral. And I'm only asking, I'm not trying to point fingers or anything, but I get this question asked all the time. You know, what, you get some people who didn't go up in their assessed value because they're new homes. And then you've got the people who were there 6 years ago, the last reassessment, they went up 15%. And their taxes went up by, well, in my example, would be a 12.8% increase in county taxes. Is that a fair statement, or am I calculating wrong?
Certainly, the premise is
You have a
correct.
new home.
The premise is correct as far as standing here and doing the math in my head. I'm not going to do that. But certainly,
Okay.
what you're saying makes sense.
Yeah.
What the actual numbers are, I would imagine
Okay,
you're
but I'm certainly in the ballpark.
Yes, sir.
It was because they didn't go down to revenue neutral. They went revenue neutral plus plus.
They didn't roll it all the way back.
They didn't roll it all the way back because they were legally allowed to raise it after going to revenue neutral. So because again, I'm only asking for my own edification so I can answer people's question.
Yeah. So, the mayor, your point is they went from 142 for their county operations down to 140, and they kept the county debt service at 12.
Right.
So, and there was a little bit of a hiccup on the slide. You see, we've cleaned that up as well.
Right.
So you see here that we have 97. Back 10 years ago, it was 142, and we were proposing taking the city's millage rate for Jasper County from 97 down to 95, and then for Beaufort County down from 109.2 to 106.9, depending on what their final numbers come out to be.
Thank you.
And the next slide is the value of a mill to the city. Again, I apologize, there's a typo here. I had this set up for the last one as the value of 1 mil. You see the 2 mil reduction from 97 to 95. The average home, the median home price in our home value in the city is $381,300. So that average or median home taxpayer is going to save $31. In Beaufort County, just based on the math, it ends up being about $35. and
That's based on a 2 mil reduction.
yeah, that's the 2 mil reduction here, and then some cross multiplication to get those numbers down there. So, if we need another workshop, fine. Obviously, we want to accommodate that. We had originally, in our original schedule, we had set up or anticipated a May 18th first reading, and then a second reading on June 1st.
Well, it's certainly up to the council. I know for myself, I'll be the first to admit that over the 3-day holiday weekend, I did not cover line by line of this book. It was just a lot to digest in basically one working day since we got it. So I think it would be worthwhile to have another workshop, but it's up to the council. If everybody's satisfied, then I'll ask questions separately as I get them. Otherwise, but I think we did ask for some additional information today that even if it's an hour, that we should follow up with another workshop before first reading. Does anybody
I
have
agree
an
with
opinion
what
with
you
that?
said, another workshop, just to see where everything's landed.
Some of the
make-
questions that we put out today.
Yeah.
Okay, so the question I have, not question, is the May 3 to 5 okay? The problem is Councilman Mersman's going to be gone for a week, then I'm going to be gone the next week. You could still have it if I'm not here, if you're comfortable. So that last week in April, I'm gone. If you want to have the workshop during that week, again, we've got capable people. If you want to get that resolved, Mr. Mayor, that's fine. Or that next week. We just, a couple things we really need, and John, the millage rate, kind of is an important question, because remember, we have to publish the millage rate and the total budget. Is it 2 weeks or 10 days before you have first reading? So if we're going to have first reading on the 18th, we're going to need to know, I mean, we'll work back, but that first week, that next budget workshop, we pretty much need a decision from the council, the millage rate, and then I think the total budget amount, because we have to publish that for the first reading on the 18th. That's all I'm saying.
Well, we have, just so everybody understands, we are legally required to pass the budget by June 30th.
Right.
And we're on a schedule to pass it by June 1st.
That's
We
correct,
do
Mr.
have
Mayor.
some wiggle room there.
Right.
So if we can't get a date in the first week in May for a workshop, and we have to push back the first and second reading,
Absolutely, sir.
we have plenty of time, right?
Right, we do. And I was just obviously being hopefully
Right.
optimistic that we could do it earlier than later, but that's totally up to the
And
council.
I'm fine with earlier, but the 4th and 5th are pretty full. We have the dedications on the 4th. We have Mr. Moyd's events on the 5th. It would have to be earlier in the week.
Yeah, we have council on the 4th also.
Yeah, so that, I mean, 4th and 5th
I'm
is,
gone that couple of days, 8th to 9th, would that, you're going.
No, I'll be back by then. I'll be back that early, that I think on the 2nd or 3rd. I'll be back on the 3rd. I mean, I could be back on the 2nd,
May
but
3rd.
don't get into midnight on the 1st. So
well, why don't, I think,
I don't need any sleep. I can be back here on the 2nd.
Either you, the mayor, or Val, but I don't plan it around just because I'm not going to be.
well, I think that, the budget is one of our most basic responsibilities. And I think these workshops should have all 5 of us here. And if it's impossible, but again, we have wiggle room. I'm okay with 8th or 9th. So Mike, why don't you take ask what people are available and I agree with you, the sooner the better, but it sounds like 8th and 9th.
Okay, well,
How about you, Val?
Got a MISDO update, 8 or 9.
so Mr. Mayor, we could do remember,
The MISDO update, did you say it's 8 or 9?
yeah, so
May?
we could do one day, and then have the budget workshop the next day if the council's okay with it. If you're
Yeah.
both open on the 8th and 9th,
Yeah.
you do the MCDO on Monday and do the budget on Tuesday.
Why don't we take a poll, Lori? I have 8th and 9th totally open,
Okay,
but,
that'd be great.
you know, let everybody look at their calendars.
And we'll get out the information
This is-
this week, so you'll have more than 3 weeks to look at it. If you have any
Right.
questions, you can get back with us.
I'm open both those days.
Both those days I'm open to.
I'm open both those. How are you, Bo?
They would work for me.
You know, but so we'll have to push it back then. That's fine. That's fine.
Do you want a straw poll on the millage? Would that help?
Yes.
You could, that's fine, but remember, if you have another one, the 8th, it's not that big of a deal. But if the council could say where you stand now, you're okay with the 2? Or you wanna go
Okay,
back
I'm
by
going to
mid-
take a straw poll and go right down. Straw poll is not binding. You can pass, you can do whatever you want, but to give them direction, I'd like to take a straw poll and see what your preference is. So either you're okay with 2, or you want some other number. I'll start with Mayor Pro Tem. Do you have a,
I'm okay with 2.
and again, you can come back on the 8th and have a different number in your head. But just so they have an idea. Val,
2 is fine with me too.
Steve?
I'll pass this time. There's numbers I'd like to see. At this time, I'll put down no. Until I have the numbers that I need to see.
I'm sorry, you put down
Until I
none?
have the numbers I need to see, I will say no to 2.
Okay, all right.
I'd like 5. No, I'm just joking. But it,
I didn't write that. I didn't write that.
yeah.
He
I
went
just-
white.
I certainly, I agree with Steve that, you know, I want to see some other numbers. But for me, it's a minimum of 2.
And
You know,
we can ask
we've
Mr.
spent it,
Carroll.
Do better, that's good, but
yeah, because we spend a lot of money, and 2% is like 0.02% decrease in the tax rate.
Us-
But we're all the other percentages of things is a lot higher. So I'm certainly at a minimum of 2, but if we can come back with, as Steve said, some questions answered, and then maybe I'll have a different opinion.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
All right. You said 1 to 4. It's 5 after 4. Oh, okay. Well, then, if everybody's satisfied, let's have a motion to adjourn. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Both said aye.